cereal kids are crazy for, Cthulhu's. Start your morning madness with a bowl of morning happiness.
Cthulhu sale is ongoing now. You will take part. Save up to 33% off gem bundles. You will take part.
Crazy crispity, crazy crunchity, crazy crunch.
Select chests up to 50% off. You will take part. Boosters, avatars, wards, and more up to 50% off. You will take part. Party up with up to 3 times favor. Worshippers and XP. You will take part. This is your duty.
Crazy Cthulhu-y. Cthulhu. Surgeon General's warning, Cthulhu's are not of this world and should not be ingested by children or adults over the age of 80. Gems are not included as a prize because Cthulhu's are not real. Reality is meaningless, time is a construct. They not all hope when you ingest Cthulhu's. Use as directed, part of balanced breakfast. For the crispity, crunchity, crazy crunch, get cuckoo with Cthulhu.
You will take part.
Of a balanced breakfast.
Can we take a commercial break?
Hey there, SMITE fans, Agro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are gonna take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're gonna need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce that the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com. I know Mike didn't say the thing. Mike, can you say the thing for him?
You're telling me an alien wore this?
SPL is live on Saturday. Appreciate the patience, everybody, while we get things underway here. But worry no longer. We are live and we are ready to bring you the SPL, powered, of course, by our friends over at Alienware. Follow them online on Twitter and Instagram at Alienware, and then go to alienwarearena.com to join their growing global community and join giveaways and a whole lot more fun stuff. If you want to pick up some of the sweet gear that our pros are playing on, go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to grab yourself a bit of a discount. But I can't do this alone. Goremizer joins me on the desk to talk about our first set of the day. Gore, we had a fun day. You broke me. We are 30 seconds into show and I've already been broken. I hate you for that. Just kidding. I love you for that.
No, it's okay.
We've had a couple long sets this weekend, Gore. We've had a couple short sets this weekend, but they've all been fun.
That's the thing that's actually most interesting to me is looking at, I want to say like the breakdown specifically, I guess, of how these games are going to continue to shake out. I think it's nothing but continued competitiveness throughout the rest of the couple of weeks. A couple of the teams that, we've already determined, I believe, the top 6 and those that are going on to the playoffs, but I still think there is a fire burning for at least one of those teams to kind of prove what they have before Phase 3 starts.
Yeah, Solar Scarabs and the Oni Warriors, the Solar Scarabs, rather, is one of those teams that has a lot to prove and a lot to build on prior to Phase 3. And the Oni Warriors will be their opponents. And then a big one, Atlantis Leviathans versus Camelot Kings. That'll be our final matchup of the day. And then a good one between the Bolts and the Dragons tomorrow. Kings stand atop of the standings, a chance to truly stand alone without tiebreakers with a win this afternoon. And so it's all about growth, as you mentioned here, for the Solar Scarab score. The Oni Warriors still with some important factors to fight for. You look towards Phase 2 playoffs. Standings are going to be important. The Oni Warriors do play the Tartarus Titans at some point before the phase is over, so they have a chance to kind of flip-flop those standings a little bit. Destiny, at least one standing place, feels like it's in the hands of the Oni Warriors, and that can be important. It can totally change up your route later on into the Phase 2 playoff event.
Yeah, after seeing what they had to offer yesterday, knowing next week they play the Titans and the Titans and the Kings next week, that makes things way more topsy-turvy. Like, the Warriors are not necessarily controlling some fates, but can definitely throw a wrench in a lot of these teams' plans.
Let's see what Neilma has to say about this matchup. And see, this is dirty by Neil. So I'm shaking in my boots. Today I've come to play the GOAT, and he is hungry for dubs. I hope I can withstand his siege and persevere for my own dub. God's help me. And here's what's dirty about Neil. So he zoomed way in on that picture. And that's doing Scream a little dirty. Because if you zoom out of that picture, if I'm remembering correctly, it's Scream in the gym, and his shoulder and arm is just looking massive. He's, like, buffed up in the rest of that picture, and Neil was like, no, we're going to zoom squarely in on his face and ignore everything else. But Neil always with a good mindset about it. And I think we do have to talk about the Scarabs a little bit here, Gore.
Yep. Yes. Oh, yes.
And maybe Scream is an okay place to start off. The GOAT himself that has Neilma shaking in his boots. He's joined the Scarabs team. They haven't suddenly been a flush with wins, but I do think they've looked a little bit more direction-oriented. They've gotten a little bit more organized, it feels like.
Yeah, there's like 2 ways to look at the Scarabs team right now. The first one, and this is the way to frame it, they've got 9 set losses in a row. That's not great. But the other one is the last set loss they had was a 2-1 against one of the top 2 teams, right? That changes everything in my mind because they've been on the up and up. They've been on the rise since they scooped up Scream. You have to look at it. Some of those weeks, some of these losses, they didn't necessarily know what their team was doing, and they didn't have a good direction. For some of them, they had a sub. And then since they picked up Scream, I think every single game has been an improvement on at least the one prior, right? They've always been moving a little bit more further forward, and I think this is a good direction for them. And that's why I have to give them a lot of credit. I think if you're able to push the Bolts to 3, you're able to come in here. You're playing the Warriors right now. Next week, you start off with the Valkyries. This is your chance to really start to turn your games around, get some wins under your belt, but showcase what you have, as I had mentioned earlier, a little bit before Phase 3. Showcase that you do have a lot more in this league than what we've gotten to see so far in this phase and so far this year. And I think this is really the good pivot point for them to dig their heels in and start pushing back as hard as they can.
Yeah, and the Solar Scarabs team feels more unpredictable now than they did prior.
Yes.
A lot of the early game pressure, kind of that oomph that this team has, flows through Scream. And I don't think that's all that surprising here. And I think Scream has really changed things around. And one guy who's probably going to agree with me on that one, is SOT, Solo or Troll, who now joins me for the pregame interview. SOT, first off, thanks for sitting down with me and taking the time prior to this big matchup that you guys have got today. So let's pick up right where Gore and I left off there. What were your kind of expectations for Scream joining this team, and how has it actually been? You know, expectations versus reality, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much expected exactly this to happen. I mean, he's the GPM king. He's a GOAT for a reason. So I teamed with him before, so I kind of knew what was going to happen. So pretty much exactly what happened is what I expected.
Sure, and the team feels, or looks, I would say, especially after your 3-game set against the Bolts, more confident and more driven now. And I think Stuart deserves a conversation around him as well. And I'll levy a similar question to you about Stuart that I did about Scream. How has Stuart been kind of coming into this team? What were your expectations, and has he met those expectations?
Yeah, Stuart's fantastic. He's a great player, and let me be clear. Let me answer this first. He is not a hindrance to the team. Stu, he's not a hindrance when he isn't building whatever build he built last time.
Yeah.
But Stu's great. He's fantastic. He calms well. He doesn't get tilted at all. He's just overall a great teammate and a great player. So I'm happy to have him. Good.
And it's been fun watching him grow alongside the rest of your team as well. You individually, you get a couple new players on your team. Stu might not impact your early to mid game as much. Scream, though, does a little bit. Do you feel like your play style with these new additions, with kind of the changing face of the Scarabs, has changed at all, or do you think you're more or less doing the same, and that's good old SOT things?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much doing the same. I don't think it's really changed too much. I'm personally trying to go more towards like I guess overall just playing better. I mean, just trying to like be a meta slave and just play whatever's good, pretty much.
Hey, well, you're good at what's good, and you also like to throw a little bit of spice in there every once in a while. I was a big fan of the Thor solo, so if you're ever looking to appease me for whatever reason specifically, Thor solo is where my vote goes. SOT, thanks for sitting down. I'll let you get back and get prepped for the game.
Thank you.
Yep. And so expectations met by both Stuart and Scream up to this point for the Solar Scarabs team. I think both have shown improvement and shown that they can change the Scarabs team for the better. And I think Gore, something that we talked about, and that's important to remember, is that Phase 2 playoffs off the table for the Scarabs team. It's all about growth, and they have a lot of time to find that consistency, because the talking point truly is, do they look improved, right, week after week? You know, individually, set to set, sometimes it's hard to see those market improvements, but when we compare 2 weeks ago to this week, that's enough time where you should see some changes, and I think we have. And
yeah, I think that's the biggest growth for them, right? This growth period has been more, not necessarily about the playoffs. I think that's actually a great way to look at it, because it was going to be a hellish trip to try and make the run they needed to get to the playoffs and to successfully be there. And honestly, to be successful at the playoffs would have been hell for them as well. But being able to improve week in, week out, showcase already this week that you can bring it to a lot of the teams in the top 4 is, I think, a brilliant position for them to be in. You get one more week of Phase 2 after today, and then you get to rest, relax, grind, scrim, get everything together. Then the games that are going to be affecting your world start to happen, and that's where they really need to have everything polished.
Agreed. I think, in all reality, a rest would probably do the Scarabs team some good. It's been a long, tumultuous journey in Phase 2. A team, Gore, that does not get a rest is the Oni Warriors in anything but yesterday. They had a long, drawn-out set against the Dragons yesterday. It was a lot of fun to watch. I know you had some fun casting it as well. And this is look, I'll be honest, this is a hard team to figure out, isn't it? This Oni Warriors team, where it feels like you just don't know what you're going to get. You're going to get that type of set where I would argue after Game 1, it very well could have been a 2-0 for the Oni Warriors. After, Game 1, they're winning the majority of it. The Jade Dragons turn it around and win in Game 1. Then, of course, the Oni Warriors win Game 2 and then fall down in Game 3. But the Oni Warriors kind of have this never-give-up attitude, and that's a big ace card to have in the back pocket.
Not only that, but I would argue they've improved way more than what we've given, or at least that I've maybe said like out loud and give credit to vocally. which is that, we did kind of meme him for a little while as this team where it's like, all right, it's Nika and maybe 4 weights that he is pulling along with him for some of those games.
That's
and
why he's so good.
And that's genuinely why it did feel like it felt like that. In some games, you would go and you'd be like, cool, is Nika having a great game? Then this is a competitive set for the Warriors. Is he not? Then we're going to go ahead and watch this be a stomp for the other side. But yesterday, they showcased, I think more than anything, and over the last couple of weeks, they've showcased every single player started to step up. Cubo was way more involved just in those 3 games yesterday than I would argue for the first 3 weeks of Phase 2, and that's what I want to see out of them is that level of play. They were very consistent, very well played, and I think if they bring that fight to the Scarabs, they have a good chance of finding a 2-0 here.
Gore, I think we have 2 great sets here today, don't we? And this one is such a heat check for both of these 2 teams where similar storylines, maybe more drastic on one side than the other. That it's been inconsistent, but we have seen improvement, right? It's been what it's been for both of these teams. And in their last couple of matchups, some standout performances despite losses. A 3-game loss to the Dragons for the Warriors, a 3-game loss to the Bolts for the Scarabs, and 2 sets where you're thinking both of these teams very well could have won a set against a top 2, 3, 4 team. And so now going up against one another, I think we're really going to get a good metric on, and there's been of course talk about the top 6 divide from the bottom 2 teams, things like that. This is going to be a really good indicator, I think, of where that divide is.
And I honestly think, and when it comes to these 2 teams specifically, that their spots in the standings right now are honestly exactly what standings are, which is it's indicative of what their history has been this phase, but is not an indication of what they are right now, right? Like the Scarabs, I'd mentioned it. It's 9 sets in a row that they've lost. They haven't won since week 1 of Phase 2, but at the same time, some of those weeks, it's like, well, they had a sub. Like, their coach was playing for them. Like, that's not necessarily going to work out too well. They've definitely had their problems. Same thing for the Warriors. They've definitely had their problems. But the teams that we've seen the last 2 weeks out of these 2, one doesn't deserve to be 1-10. One doesn't deserve to be, 5-7 or whatever that is the Warriors are in the standings. And so I think this not only, like you said, is a heat check, but a really good chance for them to showcase that separation just between 5th and 6th, 4th and 6th in that area isn't as massive as it has been so far this year.
And I think it does say something about the Solar Scarabs that, there's always this air of unpredictability. If they go against the Dragons, we're like, all right, we kind of got to vote for the Dragons. But in the back of your mind, you're like, I don't know. The Scarabs, they could do it.
They knocked the Kings out of the playoff contention last time around.
Absolutely. And, we get so excited talking about this stuff that we've now fallen behind 6 whole bands here in P's and B's for game number 1. The Fenrir, Erlang Shen, and Tiamat taken away by the Oni Warriors, and the Yemoja, Odin, and Serket taken away by the Solar Scarabs. And that's going to leave the top priority hunter in the game open, the Artemis, picked first.
And this going over to Vote, it's one that honestly he maybe needs look. Vote spent a lot of time this year having to defend his own purple buff or watch it disappear. I mean, there was one game where I feel like on cooldown he was getting invaded, and a lot of pressure happens on this dual lane for the Warriors. I think this is a good start to get Vote comfortable, have a lot of security, especially because you're going up against Stuart in the 1v1, which I think is a good start immediately for Vote. He's got the tenure, right? So he technically has that. But you also have to factor in Inbound, who is really, really good at getting aggressive early on. And now that the Scarabs removed Yemoja from play, every other god that he's able to bring into the table, I think is magnificent. It is going to be deadly to the Artemis.
Yeah, we usually see, if I'm continuing along with the support conversation there, oftentimes it's Yemoja plus Ymir banned out in the first couple. That doesn't matter to Nilma here. Nilma wants himself a Khepri Gore. We've seen a bit of a rise in Khepri. That's how I like to word it when we start to see these things. A slight uptick, I think, in the pick rate.
Would you say a sunrise in Khepri?
No, because when the sun rises, it's fully, it really rises full up into the sky. I guess the beginnings of the sunrise. I'm taking away your joke from you, and I'm sorry. I'm stepping on your laughs, and that's my fault. The very beginnings of the sunrise, it's 6:47 a.m. and just the tip is the top of the sun is
because he's
out.
Pushing it.
Right, and Khepri's pushing himself back into the meta here. Not surprised though, Gore. After I finish destroying your
what
jokes.
What was that other than just a huge anti-joke segment? I don't know what just happened.
Did
I black out?
Yeah, I'm best at anti-jokes. Hera, though, picked here for Dardes, and that's not really all that surprising because Dardes has looked good on this pick.
Yeah, this is actually a really, really solid top 3. I think for both teams, you get the Cerberus, who I'm going to assume is actually solo, not necessarily support on the one side. Really good at holding his own. If you're looking at what Nika brings to the table, I think this is going to be a very good counterbalance, which is something that theoretically shouldn't necessarily get soloed, brings a lot to the forefront of a team fight and in capability, specifically now against an Artemis, honestly, a Capri and a Hera. They're all pretty easy to jump in on and actually grab up. You're going to be forcing a lot of beads when Cerberus joins the fight. You get an Osiris, also probably for Scream in the jungle, which that's just going to be awesome to watch. Scream has been really, really good on a lot of these carry picks. He has kind of been leading this team. He joined much later than most of them, and he has a way higher KDA. He's got like an 82% kill participation. He is a driving force, and I think this Osiris hands him that. And Baronic's Giannis was, at one point, and for a lot of games, forced to be banned away just because of how potent he was on that.
Snipe Squad, Giannis and Rom paired together here. Baronic, despite losses, Baronic has been vocal for a good reason on Twitter, feeling confident in the way himself and the rest of his team have played. And Giannis has kind of been at the forefront of that conversation. Pairing it with the Rom, though, that makes for such a unique, I think, team fight potential here where, of course, through space and time, we all know what that does. Of course, the snipes from Rom, we all know what that does, the Astral Barrage. But both of those together, huge potential for distanced setup that you can then use to close the gap.
I harken back to like the first game yesterday, right? Dardes is very, very safe in the back line. Nothing's hitting him. A Giannis ult and a Rom snipe connect onto a mid laner,
yeah, good point.
And they're gone
they're
here.
Dead.
So like,
they're dead.
Maybe like some bad deja vu for the Warriors if they get ahead this game. They find themselves on the left-hand Phoenix, and then all of a sudden you see it through space and time hit the mid laner. That's where a lot of the changes can be, and so there's going to be some consistency questions for the Scarabs, but I actually really like this draft for taking on the Warriors here.
Yeah, the Warriors have put together something great for themselves as well. The top 3 we've talked a little bit about, but then a Nike and a Sun Wukong to finalize things here. Gore, I think Sun Wukong, it was nine picks so far. I feel like a lot of those were earlier on in the phase, unless I'm totally blanking on things. 11% win rate, unfortunately. The Solar Scarabs are not going to give us a lot of time to dial in on that. A Bacchus that we saw in the SEC earlier today will make his way into the SPL. So Bacchus plus Rom against Kepri plus Artemis. Could be some fireworks in that lane.
I really like Bacchus, like just in general. Like, so one thing that's very easy to miss about his kit is the fact that he has the anti-heal that's built in there on the Belch, 50% caked in, which is nice, very similar to the Sobek 3. But when you look at this team, I'm not too worried about the healing, so that's definitely something that's just cool to have, but not necessary. You've got a stun, you've got a great knock-up, brilliant dive, and most importantly, I would argue one of the most frustrating CCs, that Intoxicate being a little wavy while you're walking around, but also the damage that Bacchus can do with this ult really does let him and lend him to be a little more aggressive. And after having a really solid Sylvanas game, I'm actually excited to see what Inbound's going to be able to do on this pick, because if he's branching out into like non-meta supports, I want to see it.
That's a great point, Gore, because so often around Inbound we've talked about how we like the aggressive, in-your-face, the Hercules, the run-it-down style of picks. I mean, what is that if not Bacchus, right? I mean, that's what Bacchus wants to do. And he's the god of food and wine, and that's always going to be a thumbs up. That's right, thumbs up from me on that one. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Sun Wukong now that we've gotten to sink our teeth into the Bacchus just a little bit. Poor guy. Sun Wukong, 9 picks, 11% win rate.
Yep.
Gore, this is not a pick that's found its feet just yet. Do you think it works here in game 1?
I think it's going, and I mean, look, Wukong does one thing really, really well, and that's typically survive. I think a lot of the games, I'm sorry to throw you under the bus, but I think a lot of them were the Valkyries. They just constantly, for the first few weeks, only picked like Wukong Jingwei. It got to the point where it was getting banned against them because that was pretty much all they were showcasing that they had to play. And so I think this is a pick that the stats maybe don't necessarily read what he is going to bring to the table. And I'm worried about it late game. He's going to have good damage.
Can the sun rise on a new day for the Solar Scarabs, or will the Oni Warriors put him down once more? Game number 1 starts right now.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Gore. Jumping right into the action is J-Mac and Mifflin. We'll have Doug be our cameraman, as always, for it. And looking at this lineup, it looks very similar to one that we just recently saw, Mifflin. I think everything here, except for the Bacchus, was the composition that the Scarabs used to win in their previous set.
Yeah, this is like a very distinct tonal game. This is the Oni Warriors playing Oni Warriors style stuff, maybe barring that Sun Wukong that, as the Des highlighted, is kind of reminiscent of what you expect from the Valkyries. Outside of that, though, I think Dardes is one of the few, if not only, players playing the Hera. Cuban Fred has had a good deal of success on the Nike as well. And then the Solar Scarabs kind of running it down with a very Scarab draft. I think this Bacchus, though, is something that I've said in the past that I think will fit Inbound's playstyle incredibly well. Has the ability to get aggressive in the early game, use that flop, use that belch as an initiation factor, but incredibly strong late game scaling. He's one of the tankiest Guardians at level 20 thanks to that chug ability, giving him additional protections. And Inbound is a player that historically gets caught out occasionally in the late game, finds himself getting a little over-aggressive in the late game. Maybe those additional protections with Bacchus that escape inside of the flop can help him out with that.
Neil gonna get a pluck. It's Inbound right into a trap. That's a lot of potential CC chain that goes that way. Luckily for Inbound, he is able to walk away from there, losing out on a couple potions, and his purification bead's the most important factor for it. It's a dangerous combo. Typically when you see the Artemis, you think the old school, pluck him back with a Sobek right into a trap, but Khepri drag into a trap, that's disgusting.
And it's easier to do. That's very easy to execute on. Anytime Neilma finds that pull, you better believe Vote's going to be there with the trap, and then likely the slow afterward to make sure the chase down is there. Inbound forced to use the beads early on, and I think he's going to be forced to use the beads consistently. It's a very good counter-engage tool for the Oni Warriors inside of this lane, effectively crushing the aggression that Inbound is going to look for inside of the 2v2. If he flops in and he's not hitting Neil, if he's looking for that belch onto Vote, he's just going to get abducted, and then he's going to get trapped, and then he's going to get slowed, and during out all that, when you're CC'd, Artemis does percentage more damage to you.
And lacking that CC immunity inherently, whether it be from an ultimate or anything else, just makes it so much more difficult if Inbound does happen to get picked out. And you can immediately see the Oni Warriors trying to punish Stewart by freezing the lane instantly. At only 2 minutes into the game, we already see these pros freezing the wave. Stewart does manage to take that Scorpion for himself at least, so he'll lose out on a few of the melee minions in the lane, but at least he gets something for all that trouble.
But the Warriors trying to steal that Scorpion away actually zoned them off a couple of minions worth of XP. Stewart misses out on the 3 melees. I'd say the Warriors likely missed out on at least 2 melees there as well, so they do strip away more farm than they lose themselves, but at the cost of that means that they're going to fall behind relative to the rest of the map. Jungler is going to be slightly ahead. Generally, your Hunter is going to be at least 1 level ahead of the jungle, maybe 2 at certain points as the game goes on. It gets a little bit further beyond that because junglers struggle a little bit here in Season 8 to find farm. But as of right now, Vote finds himself level 4, Stewart just now ticking over to level 4, and junglers equalized.
I think one important thing to talk about with the Scarabs is despite their win-loss as far as sets go, despite the performance they had earlier on the phase, this is a new team. They have a new jungler. They have a new hunter. It's all about the maturation process with these 2 new players jumping into the team. And while it may be a rough path for them finishing out this phase, going in towards phase 3, this could be a team that we really got to pay attention to. Inbound starting to diversify his god pool compared to the more standard meta that we've seen. We've seen Stewart get a lot more comfortable with these hunters, and Scream has really been a pillar for initiation for this team and has been a really big shot caller for them. Speaking of, he goes for the blink straight against Vote, looking for the stun. He's going to get the beads early from Vote and ult from Baronic just for good measure, but Inbound gets caught, has to use his own purification beads, and a quick escape route out.
Target selection was interesting there from the Solar Scarab. Scream says, I want Vote. Inbound says, I want Neilma. When you're not agreeing, well, you're probably not going to get anybody. At least able to strip away the beads from Vote is Scream. So Artemis, without that inherent CC immunity available just yet, as she is still level 4, is susceptible to some ganks. That said, Neilma does tick over to level 5, and Scarab's Blessing might remove that option for the Solar Scarabs.
And in that initiation, you get the beads from Vote. That's huge. You get the carries beads, makes them a little bit more susceptible. But you also take Inbound's beads in the process with it. Which of those is the more valuable beads burn?
It's probably Vote's. I mean, he is the carry going forward. But he does have CC immunity built into his kit. And Inbound now is going to have to play a little bit more passively for the next 2 minutes. Is very susceptible to death himself. I think Neil, if he's able to find that abduct immediately into that trap, Inbound's at least losing out on 60, maybe more percentage of his HP. But I think at the end of the day, anytime you're able to strip a carry's beads, you're probably more happy with that.
Cuvo just trying to secure the blue buff for Nika, and will be successful in doing so, making sure to keep SOT at bay. Very quiet from the solo laners, where typically that's where a lot of the sparks have been flying in our last few sets. Teams have really been focusing a lot on keeping solo lane down, but these two teams just looking for maybe a little bit more towards the later stages of the game. As those late stages come through, where does that win condition kind of come for either of these teams?
The Oni Warriors likely looking to make sure their Artemis, which is a late game hyper carry and one of the best of which you can have in Smite, is able to operate, and Dardes doing the exact same thing. But both carries on the Oni Warriors being so immobile means that they're going to struggle to survive up against this dive from the Solar Scarabs. Luckily for the Warriors, they've got a steadfast front line. Nika on the Sun Wukong, Cuvo Fred and Nike, and then Neilma with that additional safety net thanks to the Scarabs' blessing. Could all make it a little bit easier for the Warriors to just survive these engagements, or their backline rather. Whereas the Solar Scarabs, I think, have got some pretty nice win conditions. We saw what the Jade Dragons were able to do with a late game Yanis. It was one, maybe two snipes that hit Dardes in the late game that won them game one. If Baranik's able to do that, if the Scarabs are able to hang out and just wait for 80% of a carry's HP bar to evaporate from the full map, that could do it for them. Or they can just rely on, as the desk was highlighting, Stewart to finish off those kills with his snipes. The initiation and CC core of the Solar Scarabs is incredibly high as well. I think both of these teams find themselves in a position where they're playing very standard Smite. It's 3 frontliners and 2 hyper carries, but the Oni Warriors might have the advantage so far as damage scaling come late. The Solar Scarabs have a mobility advantage.
Cuvo, Dardes looking towards the right side of the map while Neil zones inbound away. Gonna get the root against Baranik, and Baranik back onto this Giannis, was banned away from him. I believe it's the 3rd game of their last set, was banned away just because of the performance he had in the first 2 games. We'll see maybe if his performance warrants another ban come game 2, either win or loss for it. This has been one of the gods that Baranik has really started to shine with as of recently. The Tiamats haven't been working out for him. Some of the other more meta-style picks haven't really been performing up to standard for it, but this Giannis has been an entirely different beast for Baranik.
Yeah, generally in the early game, he's able to get slightly aggressive. He farms incredibly well, so able to strip away that blue buff. SOT not able to pick it up this time around, but the chase is there. Neilma hovering.
SOT gets stunned. Scream goes in, has the tether on 2. Looking for more through space and time. Just passes by, not able to get quite a bit. Neil now caught in the middle of SOT and Baranik, but they're not interested in the fight further beyond. They're just going to go for the retreat.
Solar Scarab setting the pace yet again inside of that early game. Nice little invade attempt is successful for them, and they're able to make their way out of there very safely. But that was a high commitment engagement for the Solar Scarabs, who used 3 of their ultimates, one of which being that global tool, and without it, Baranik's in trouble.
Dardes drops the Argus immediately on Baranik, but luckily for him, doesn't get hit by the polymorph. Argus will chase under the tower just a little while longer, but eventually has to go for a retreat because Dardes is under fire by inbound, and now Neilma in danger with Scream. But luckily for Neil, he makes it back to the tower. Scream has to use the Lord of the Afterlife to get away. Dardes doesn't have the damage to confirm the kill, so inbound will just make sure to continue zoning them away so they can escape.
So Solar Scarabs strip away blue buff. Oni Warriors head over to the enemy red buff and are able to pick that one up, as well as strip the beads away. Oh, no, not. Actually, Baranik does maintain his beads throughout that engagement, so pretty sizable win, I'd say, for the Solar Scarabs, considering how close Baranik was to falling down. But it's not what you're able to do with one invade, and that goes for both of these teams. If the Scarabs can keep up their pressure and continually invade this blue buff, that's going to put Nika at a pretty large deficit. If the Oni Warriors can keep invading this red buff consistently, Baranik is going to find himself under fire. But as of right now, this game is largely even. Only one set of gods have level disparity here, and it's the Hunters. Vote finds himself 1 level in the lead.
Both of these mid laners opting for a Chronos Pendant for their first item. For a Giannis, not too out of the ordinary. More cooldown means more portals, more chances to fire that through space and time, and tons of shotgun damage, or attempts at shotgun damage with that unstable vortex. But seeing out of the Hera, I like it because of the polymorph. It's one of the most obnoxious abilities to deal with. It feels like you can always juke it out, but the second that you try and do it, oh no, it already hit me. It's deceptively quick, I think is the best way I'm trying to put it. It feels like you could walk away from it so quickly. Vote may not be able to walk away for too much longer, needs one more sniper. Inbound could get the last basic, but he doesn't need it. Stewart will manage to get all 3 snipes and take down Vote.
That's unfortunate for Vote, who's just trying to pick up his purple buff there inbound, able to utilize that aggressive early game from Bacchus to keep the pressure up. And Artemis being immobile means that she just has to juke and not able to do it this time.
Another Argus drop this time against SOT. He's got to leap away. Dardes is low, has the Scarabs blessing just for some extra safety, and SOT got caught by Nika. Now it's Scream who's in danger, gets plucked back by Neil Baronic. With the rotation, Argus chasing down Scream, leap out of the cloud for Nika, but it's not enough damage to take down Scream. He's got to go for a full run, inbound body blocking for as much as he can. And luckily he's got the beads and the belly flop. He'll get over the wall and back to safety.
Really good peel from inbound there, just dedicating his body to separate Scream from the engagement. But now, the Oni Warriors, what were they going to do with that red buff timer? Well, it looks like they're going to go ahead and run right back into it.
Inbound's trying to stop this. Cuvo Fred is here, but looks like he was unsuccessful in stealing that red. Nice rotation from Stewart means they can guarantee the buff and guarantee their safety as well.
This is a pace of game that I'm really starting to associate with the Oni Warriors, J-Mac. I mean, they really do like this slower pace, 10 minutes in, 11 minutes rather. We're only looking at 2 kills, but neutral objectives have spawned up. Gold Fury and Pyromancer acting as POIs on the map and could be where either one of these teams can head over and try and force these engagements. I think that the Oni Warriors, if it's a 4v4 where Nika isn't rotated in, are likely going to be at the advantage as long as SOT isn't there as well. But in the 5v5 at this phase of the game, what SOT brings to this Solar Scarabs team fight is invaluable. You have to have them there if you're looking for a tried and true engagement, because he's your largest AoE CC core. He's the one that is going to be able to consistently burn these beads from the Oni Warriors. That Stygian Torment is such a threatening tool inside of these team fights. Are you relying on Scream and the tether to do it? Is it the stun from inbound? Those can, but they're a little bit harder to execute on. I think it's more so on SOT to set up for Scream and inbound respectfully.
He'll get spotted out by Scream, who's just trying to chase as much as he can and maybe buy some time to keep Neil distracted. Vote used the Caledonian Boar very early on in a panic because Stewart and inbound are pushed so far forward. Now Neil and Dardes making a rotation, but with it, because Scream was in the jungle keeping Neil busy, they get that call out and know to make that quick retreat.
Vote tries to pick up his purple buff again, but inbound has timer from last time and does not want to let him have it. Rotation, though, from the Oni Warriors keeps Stewart out of the fight.
Stewart's going to get back to the safety of the Tier 1 for now. Inbound in the middle of 3, but nobody will decide to push up against him, so he'll make it back to safety. You did see Cuvo waiting in the wings on the top side of the map, but he's not going to make any further aggression just yet. Now, maybe looking to hunt down Baronic here, waiting for him to come back across the wall. Luckily for Baronic, he can go through the wall, so he doesn't have to try and make these awkward paths back into the mid lane. Instead, he wants to try and secure the red buff that's been such a hot conversation and a hot point for the Oni Warriors to try and take.
Neilmon makes his attempt at stealing it, instead finds Baronic here, who had already cleared it out. It's up to inbound now to create that space, but Neil, level 10 on the Khepri, not really much threat towards him. He can do whatever he wants, and inbound jumping in, that's huge.
Flops against Vote and gets the leap from Cuvo Fred. They're both going to walk away, but Neil is still walking forward to try and stop this purple buff, but he's not going to be successful in taking it or distracting them for too much longer. Scream rotates over, is able to help Stewart take that one down.
That's surprising that inbound's allowed to jump in with 4 members of the Oni Warriors stacked up right there. You'd think maybe we see the Caledonian Boar, an Abduct, a Polymorph, Cubo Fred could just knock him up on the tail end, and all those forms of CC are easily extended by the rest of the CC on the side of the Warriors, but maybe the Warriors weren't privy to the idea that the Scarabs were only really 2 or 3 members in range to put up a fight. So instead, it is a reset back to neutral. Not a whole ton to fight over there. And now, 13 minutes of the game, we're starting to see a little bit of separation in the XP and gold charts. About 2,000 gold in favor of the Solar Scarabs. XP slowly leaking in their favor as well. 1 level inside of the Hunter role, 1 level in the jungle is going to all add up slowly. But we haven't really seen a contentious fight just yet. No one's really looked at this Gold Fury, at this Pyromancer. There hasn't been a lot of skirmishing happening, or there has been, but it's over small objectives like blue buffs or back camps.
Inbound gets a stun against Cuvo Fred all the way back towards his back camp. He'll get plucked by Neil. Immediately has the flop to get away. Rooted on the tail end of it, but one thing that we have seen from a lot of supports is they go 3-4 items in, they say, you know what? I'm pretty tanky. We can go some damage. Inbound recognizes I'm a Bacchus. I've got Chug. Gives me a lot of protections. I'm going to go damage second item. Spear of Desolation online for Bobby so early in the game.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's not just about the damage with the CDR. It's a really good way to slot some of that in there. Penetration helps out a fair bit as well. Inbound is essentially a tactical nuke at this point. I mean, he can flop in, drop all of his damage instantly, and if he dies afterward, and he likely won't because he does have Chug and a fully stacked Thebes, that it doesn't super matter. The rest of his team should be able to finish off these kills, be it a snipe from Stewart or one from Baronic himself. Solar Scarabs able to strip away the Pyromancer this time around. No contention from the Oni Warriors, but the Warriors want some more on the left-hand side.
Inbound leaves Stewart alone and separates the fight between the two. Stewart gets shoved back to the tower. Meanwhile, Inbound is caught in the middle of 4. The purple buff, again, another big topic for the Warriors. They're really going for these camp invades on this top side of the map, specifically on this top left side of the map. They will be successful in taking that one away, making sure that Stewart is denied a little bit of farm, but Stewart not really deterred. He still has about a half level up over Voe, and that's where some of the experience gap that the Solar Scarabs have is going towards their favor.
And not only is that is not the only gap in the Hunter role, they've got a little bit of disparity in the builds as well. Vote elects to go down that crit tree immediately into the Rage, whereas Stewart is going to get a pretty sizable power spike from the Silver Branch Pro once he has his second ability pop. So as of right now, I'd argue the Solar Scarabs are vastly favored inside of the team fight, but if the Oni Warriors, and specifically Vote, are given any opportunity to look at these Gold Furies, if they're given 10 seconds alone, those crits shred neutral objectives.
There's been a lot of, as you said earlier, there's been a lot of fighting, but it's mostly been a little throw an ability here, smack a guy with a belch or with a basic attack here and there, but there hasn't been a decisive fight just yet. Maybe we'll see that change around this Gold Fury started up by the Scarabs. Neil is here. Gold Fury well under a quarter health. Neil trying to steal it away. Will not be successful in doing so, but gets a nice triple root. Sets up the setup for Dardez. But forced the ult out of Scream, and immediately a hasty retreat by the Scarabs. They get the objective, their main prize, and they're able to get out with their lives.
The Scarabs are just playing so much more confident on the map right now. They're the ones starting the Pyro. They're the ones starting the Gold Fury. They're doing it in situations where they just have a little bit of time, and now the Warriors going deep.
Nika makes a rotation, gets both relics out of Baronic. He's forced to go all the way back to the depths of his jungle, Scream and inbound in route, but the Tier 1 tower is the response for the Oni Warriors to get both the mid's relics and his tower, despite losing the Fury.
Maybe the red buff as well. Baronic sticking around a little bit too long. The Oni Warriors not happy, losing out on both neutral objectives with 0 contention instead. Gonna go ahead and keep up what they've been doing this entire game, invading red, invading purple, and maybe even looking towards this left-hand tower considering how heavily they're grouped.
Looking inbound, not going to get hit by the damage from Dardez. Instead, he'll go for the stun in response. But again, purple buff stripped away. Inbound flops in on top of Neil. Neil in a little bit of danger, has to use the Scarabs Buzzing for just himself. Inbound will pop it with his own ultimate with the Intoxicate. And SOT gets hit by the Polymorph. In the sky is Stewart looking for snipes, but nobody is low enough for him to take. Instead, it'll be Inbound who falls down off the rotation from Nika.
Man, if Vote was a little bit further forward with that Caledonian Boar, would have hit Bobby and would have bounced the rest of the Scarabs. Could have been an opportunity for the Oni Warriors to barrel through that team fight, but instead, Tusky a little out of range. Went over to the wave, and the Solar Scarabs, who were trying to surge themselves forward off an invade attempt from the Oni Warriors, find themselves crushed and lose a Tier 1 tower on left for their efforts. Meanwhile, in mid, though, Scream, trying to make something happen on the map, is able to proxy one of these waves, but no POIs available means that there's nowhere for the Scarabs to go right now. Oni Warriors, off the back of losing a couple of neutrals, pick up some permanence.
They do manage to strip the Scorpion away from the Oni Warriors side of the map as well, so that'll enhance their speed and blue buff. In fact, all buffs on their side are enhanced. They get a little bit of extra bang for your buck. And in order to take those, they're maybe just a potential advantage for the Oni Warriors because they've been doing these constant red and purple invades. So maybe it was not the best idea for them to take those Scorpions in this case.
You know what? I'll say it's a good idea either way. You know,
good experience in gold.
Experience some gold, but maybe incentivize you to defend your own buffs this time around. Red buff is going to be spawning very soon, and the Oni Warriors have not been secretive with their strategy. They want that red buff, they want that purple, but we're approaching the 20-minute mark, J-Mac, and these buff invades are starting to mean less and less. Gold and experience still favoring the Solar Scarabs, despite all these efforts from the Warriors to strip their farm. I think they're going to have to look elsewhere. The Warriors, that is, if they want to find a lead, find a comeback into this match. Eventually, it's going to have to come down to a team fight.
It really just does feel like these invades are to keep the Warriors in the game. Yes, you want to keep the purple away from the carry. You know, the attack speed can be detrimental. The red buff is a lot of power for it, but they're not getting ahead. Their levels aren't going higher, while Scream's health bar is going lower. Nika blinks in, misses the Tiger, but gets the ultimate out of Scream anyways. Polymorph hits SOT in the back line, and once again, the Oni Warriors set up for another invade. They steal the red buff away, and they make their way towards the left side and steal the purple yet again.
It makes sense what Scream was trying to do there. He's trying to loop low and catch the Oni Warriors on their rotation into the red buff, but gets spotted out by Dardes and lose out on too much of his HP. Can't stick around as he has gone for a relatively squishy build. Wingblade, the only bit of defense for him to help out against Dardes, means that really Polymorph plus that versatility is too much.
Vote gets clipped by the ult. Looking for more damage as Stewart gets the Aegis immediately. Third snipe won't hit. SOT is low, but looking for the chase. Rooted by Neil from a range. Argus dropped as well. Scream diving into the back line of the Oni Warriors, but he's going to get plucked back by Neil. Inbound blinks over the wall, looking for a stun on anybody. Finds Dardes, the only one with that belch. And now Scream trying to run away as Nika has made his rotation towards this side.
And Nika's appearance spells the end of the fight. Stinky boy, no one wants to fight him. Solar Scarabs immediately leave out of that, and well, the Oni Warriors a little slow on the rotation, but don't lose out anything for it. Solar Scarabs, however, do lose out on a ton of their relics. 2, 3 blinks down, beads lost on Scream as well, so that's a lot of their initiation gone in the near future. And the Oni Warriors, this is their winning path. They like when the game goes this long, and immediately they want to go for fire.
Fire Giant started. SOT leaps into the wave, not even recognizing that this would be an option for the Warriors. Fire Giant started up down to half health. Now SOT maybe recognizing as he sees the ring of fire appear around the FG, who used the breath just against Neil. Fire Giant getting low. They're still committed to it. They haven't dropped it just yet through space and time. Does some damage, and the Solar Scarab steal it away. They took just a little too long going for it. Cubo will jump in the back against SOT. Nika low on the cloud, and Scream maybe looking to take him down.
Meanwhile, on the back line, Nika does fall, and Inbound is engaging. This fight is separated.
The root is good, but not good enough as SOT's able to leap right past it. Neil does juke the sickle, but he won't be able to juke anything further beyond there. Stewart gets the last hit for it, taking down Neil Ma. Fire Giant stolen, 2 killed, and the Solar Scarabs have turned this back.
J-Mac, did you notice where Dardes was for that entire Fire Giant push? He was in dual lane. He was clearing waves. Let that be a lesson to the Oni Warriors when there is global presence on the other side, i.e. Baronic, with a ability to teleport his entire team to the Fire Giant. You probably want your secure there. Solar Scarabs strip it away and take the fight after.
Looking for even more. They get the tier 2 tower off the back of the fight. Cubo takes a huge chunk of damage as well as Scream, as Argus and the damage from Dardes is just a little too much. Caledonia Boar starts ripping through. Vote picks up 1, and the stun connects to everybody else. Phoenix is low. Phoenix falls, but almost everybody else on the Scarabs has to run now because they're well under the half health mark.
That should spell the end of this engagement. Baronic still has the ultimate to peel out if he so chooses, but Cubo's in.
He goes in with the ultimate, but immediately he loses that entire shield, and Baronic's the one to put him down. Vote gets some big damage against Baronic, but luckily he's got portals to get right back to safety. Neil has respawned full health, still looking for a chase, but there aren't many targets that he can find.
Man, the Solar Scarabs got this guerrilla warfare tactic. All right, they're separated, they're chasing us, we're coming out of the trees, I'm dropping out of the leaves and finding my pick. Baronic able to finish off Cubo Fred, who had thought he had maybe isolated Inbound, and Inbound's actually got Vote.
Vote luckily has that Scarab's blessing, so he'll be able to make his way out thanks to the help of Neil. Stewart won't be so favorable.
No
Somersault Cloud is good, but the lifesteal against the decoy keeps Stewart a little healthier than he was before. Inbound has to run away as he's being chased out by Dardes and Neil. The only Fury that was started up by the Warriors immediately, they have to give up on it because of the rotation from the Scarabs.
I think Inbound may have found a pick that really does fit his style here, J-Mac. I mean, he's just leaping in willy-nilly. He doesn't care how many members of the Warriors there. Leaps in, takes a sip of his flask there, and says, all right, I don't feel the pain. I'm too tanky. Doesn't matter if I'm out of position. Doesn't matter if I'm 1 versus 3. I'm going to deal my damage, and I'm going to walk away. And so far, it has been working out for him incredibly well, initiating a lot of these fights, separating the engagements, and only receiving 1 death in exchange. The Solar Scarabs primed and ready and still have a minute and a half on this Fire Giant power play. Oni Fury could be the target. Maybe this tier 2 on left could fall back to the Oni Fury later on. Maybe just send Scream over and have him solo the Pyromancer.
He'll get Pyro, and he may even be able to take a tier 2 tower by himself if he so chooses, while the rest of his team starts grouping around this left side of the map, trying to distract the Oni Warriors more than anything. And I don't think he's worried about showing himself. He'll walk right through and take that tier 2 tower. Nobody from the Warriors are going to throw a response this way. Nika does go back to base, but It's too little too late. Damage is already done. The tower is gone, and the Warriors have dispersed.
Yeah, the Warriors were given an opportunity there to take a 5 versus 4 on the Oni 3, but instead tried to defend their Phoenix inbound zoning, but there's that tankiness on display. What are you critting for there, Vote? 97? I don't think Bobby cares.
A little bit of that Spectral Armor playing in with it. It's so hard to hit inbound at this point. He is extremely tanky with those protections he gets from the Chug. With the build path, he's gone towards a little bit more physical defense to try and deal with Vote, but at this point, Vote just doesn't hit hard enough against him. Inbound, level 15 with this Bacchus, he's already hit, I would already say he's hit critical mass for his tankiness as far as his levels go. Now it's just his items and more damage for Intoxicate, which is, as mentioned on the desk, probably the most obnoxious CC in the game to deal with, trying to walk while your camera is forcing you to sway back and forth.
Yeah, it is super annoying, and that's, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and say Bacchus has the actual most annoying form of CC. It's the belch. It's not the stun that comes from belch. It literally shakes your camera.
It's the worst.
It's the only ability in the game that does that. It doesn't affect your actual aim. It doesn't affect anything. It just affects your view model. Your view model shakes around a little bit, and it doesn't do anything, but God, I hate it so much, J-Mac, when it's happening to me.
It's anything with visual obstruction, is it? You know, the blind from Ra or Shibalanke, even the decoy, the little goose that comes from Loki.
That doesn't bother me at all.
No, the Loki one might be the worst one for me, because at least with like Ra or Shibalanke, it's a total I can't see aside for Shibalanke directly in front of you, you know, just a few units ahead. But when it's stuff like that's just covering the screen like just slightly enough to where you can kind of see but kind of get, that's the worst for me.
Well, mid-Phoenix for the Oni Warriors is going to be spawning up very shortly. Maybe only one more Fire Mini Wave for them to contend with before they've got that Phoenix back and available to them. Fire Giant itself going to be barreling down to the earth here in a couple of seconds. The Oni Warriors have to make a difficult decision. Do we defend the Fire Giant? And I think they essentially have to. The siege has shown to be very strong from the Scarabs.
Cubo went back to base. Neil gets caught.
Huge ult!
Argus drops in the middle of 3. SOT is the one holding it at bay. Baronic uses his ultimate to try and get inbound back, but he's stuck in the trap and body blocked away from the portal. He can't get back the safe way. Instead, he'll have to walk all the way back to his team. Has the belly flop to get back away, but Dardes with a huge Argus in the midst of the fight.
All I saw was inbound essentially AFK for a second there, trying to get into the portal. He was standing still for 3, maybe 4 seconds while Vote was just railing him with auto attacks, and it didn't matter. It legitimately did not matter. He had the rage crits, the wind demon penetration, he got his passive stack because he was standing inbound, that is, inside of the Transgressor's Fate, and with all that, he was still only critting for about 130. He bought a lot of time inbound, essentially, just by putting his body there. Zones 4 members of the Oni Warriors trying to kill him, and they couldn't do it.
And Neil with a nice portal body block on probably the easiest god to do it with, aside from maybe Cthulhu ulting. But Neil will walk forward.
So
Look at
annoying.
triple trap out of Vote right at that corridor, knowing that's where the Scares have been collapsing in almost every team fight they've had in recent matches, is that little spot. And make sure to just put up a picket fence there and say, no, well, maybe not a picket fence, it's more like a barbed wire fence up there saying, yeah, I dare you to walk through this point.
Yeah, he actually just pinged it as well. He says, hey guys, if we start losing the fight,
right here,
I want you to run through this corridor, okay? And if you do, it's going to be a sick prank. The Solar Scarabs are going to get totally trapped. But the Scarabs aren't worried about chasing out that far. Instead, it's about the defensive positioning around the Fire Giant itself. Neilma, the only one willing to peek his head in there. So the Solar Scarabs now with an opportunity. Nika in base could look to pull the objective itself, or maybe try and isolate Dardes. This god is still incredibly immobile, does have the health shield, does have a fair bit of CDR, does have Scarab's Blessing to keep him alive, but you get through all that, it's just a mortal, essentially. Hera has to walk away, and against this dive from the Scarabs, best of luck.
Fire Giant at half health. Neilma at the front line with Nika. Cubo looking for a flank. Fire Giant is getting low. Oni Warriors stealing it away with a contra. That's another objective taken, but Screaming Inbound aren't going to let that one just go for free. Vote's in danger.
Nice
Scares
revive.
Blessing gets him out of danger, but Baronic's got more than enough damage with the Unstable Vortex. Take him down. Nika trades it out and takes Stewart's life in the process, and maybe able to get more as Inbound low in the backline. SOT kept away by 3 as Nika picks up the double kill. SOT just trying to zone the carries away from the rest of the team.
Yeah, these guys are not confirming their objectives. Oni Warriors able to strip this one away, and SOT That's a late Stygian Torment inside the engagement. Now isolated, you said it. He's just buying time. He's trying to slow down this push from the Warriors.
He's buying a ton of time. Neil does get the pluck, gets the beads immediately out of SOT, and he may be looking for a re-engage. Baronic and Scream have made their way back towards the fight. They only lost both, so it could be a 3v4 Baronic will get a ton of damage against Neil Ma, gets a root against 3, but he body blocked himself from his own escape path. Scream picks him up and makes it now a 3v3. They get the Fire Giant, but the Warriors did lose 2 in the process.
And they lost maybe some of their most important pieces. Vote's not going to have Fire Giant for the push, so your siege is going to take a lot longer. Neilma, who is generally going to be your dedicated tank for these permanent objectives, these tier 2 towers and phoenixes, is going to be lacking that self-sustain from the Fire Giant HP 5. So now it's up to Cubo or Nika to be that frontliner for their team if the Oni Warriors do decide to look for some sort of sieges. But the Solar Scarabs, they don't seem to turn to me. They don't seem like they're worried about anything. Scream is setting up an ambush. If anyone's unfortunate enough on the side of the Warriors to walk into the jungle, they're going to have 3 members of the Scarabs staring them down. Vote narrowly avoids it by walking over into the mid lane, but the Scarabs are keeping up their push, man. This is a lot of aggression on the map.
We're hitting dangerous territories of the game now. 30 minutes in, Hunters are both nearly getting towards their full build, as well as the mid laners, so that's where their biggest brunt of damage starts coming through. Dardes hasn't finished the starter item just yet. Meanwhile, Baronic has and is even working towards that Rod of Tahuti as a final item. Meanwhile, Dardes still needing to finish up his penetration on the tail end of it. So, huge power spike in favor of the Scarabs just in the item department alone as they finished out these builds. And it's on some of those big late game hyper carries like we talked about earlier on. Stewart with a full build, Baronic near full. Giannis is already starting to swing pretty hard. If we could see what the damage numbers look like for Baronic, as he's been all over the map and a part of all of these fights. And well, he may not be at the top of it, but he is at the top for his team.
You know who is at the top? Dardes. 21,000. He is nearly 10K up on his contemporary inside of Baronic. That's a tough one. The Solar Scarabs have not been able to close gap onto this Hera. She's been incredibly safe. I think maybe effectively kills, air quotes, I'm air quoting right now, kills Dardes twice, but both times, Scarabs blessing by Neilma. Neilma's been very on point with his ultimate so far this game, and much to the chagrin of the Solar Scarabs. If they want any opportunity to close out this match, I think that's the wall you have to climb over right there. Dardes cannot be alive.
I mean, how many Arguses has he dropped in the middle of 3 people as well? We saw one in just that last fight. We saw a couple in the previous one, but Neil and Cubo may have gotten spotted out. Inbounds in the mid lane can make a quick rotation over. Neil goes for the pluck against Scream, but gets stunned in the process of it. Cubo uses the Sentinel of Zeus instantly in the fight and now has to leap away as Scream pushes him back to the rest of the team.
So here's the thing about that Fire Giant power play. It's over. I mean, there's 25 seconds left on this buff. The Oni Warriors, I think, missed their opportunity. Maybe it's because they lost that priority target inside a vote. Their siege isn't going to be incredibly strong, but I think it's more so the Solar Scarabs playing the map incredibly well right now. They're keeping the Oni Warriors guessing. The Oni Warriors decided, we're going to group up on right near the Fire Giant, try and push down to tier 2. Solar Scarabs show 4 members on left and force a rotation.
Oh, Baronic wanted to go through the portal, but one of his tanks took it away from him. Now he has to use his own ultimate as it escapes because Argus dropped in the midst of everybody. Baronic does manage to make it out, but I'm imagining he's a little salty just because one of those front lines took the portal away from him.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate situation. Hey, bro, I needed that, but no fight to be had for the next minute or so. I'm sure Baronic's just fine with it, maintains his life, doesn't have to use any of those relics. The ultimate going to be available very soon for him, so this Fire Giant is going to be a dead even engagement. If anything, maybe Scream's B is going to be on cooldown for a little bit longer, maybe 30 seconds after the Fire Giant spawns. That's going to become available. Blink from Cubo Fred going to be down for about a minute now as well, but outside of that, just about every single ultimate, barring Dardes's, is going to be available, and every single relic in the game is available as well, barring the 2 that we just discussed.
And as the Fire Giant is set to respawn, that will be the primary target for these 2 teams, as it is now the enhanced Fire Giant as we tip past that 30-minute mark earlier on. This is the most important objective on the map, barring the Titan, I would say. Obviously, the sole objective you need to in order to win for it, but enhanced Fire Giant will do a ton for either of these teams. Inbound is making sure that his team has positional advantage against it. And Neilmal falls through the portal and loses about 3/4 of his health bar because of it. Inbound takes a little bit of damage from Dardes, and they got the somersault cloud out of Nika. That's a big defensive ultimate taken away from the Warriors.
Yeah, Nika gonna have to be very intelligent on his dive now. Won't be able to just willy-nilly walk in and then use that somersault cloud to resustain up instead. He's gonna have to just be on the ground. Doesn't have that secondary health bar.
Fire Giant down
Bobby.
to half instantly. Bobby and SOT jump in the back line. Vote's taken down almost in the process, but Neil makes sure to hold him for a little while longer. Portal from SOT tries to cut off the path, but he guesses wrong where Vote was going to go. Instead, Vote gets back to safety. It's a trade 1-for-1. Dardes for inbound. Fire Giant was leashed. Now Nika is at full health in the back line while SOT is looking a little worse for wear.
SOT locked down now. Duck picks him up, but can resustain off the wave, and that's a lot of sustain.
Got a huge heal back from those little ghosts, but the rest of his team have just let him go. They're recognizing there may not be anything to save his life, or it may just be allowing him to buy time for the rest of the team to reposition themselves. Both frontliners down from the Scarabs.
Yo, that trap wall, it paid itself off in dividends. I mean, Bobby trades out his life for Dardes by flopping onto him, but Dardes was standing on triple traps, just gets locked in, does inbound, and just eats every single auto attack from Vote. Neilma able to lock him down as well and trades out his life. That's a trade that you're willing to take if you're the Solar Scares, but maybe not SOT as well. Dardes respawning in 1 second, SOT respawning in 40 desynced timers, favoring the Oni Warriors, and they're establishing the defensive positioning on the Fire Giant itself yet again. Look at the wards on the map as well. The Oni Warriors have complete vision advantage.
They'll start up the Fire Giant immediately. Scream at half health gets the leap from Cuvo Fred over the wall. Baronic throws a little bit of damage out, but it won't find anybody. Fire Giant down to half health. It's just Vote and Neil in the pit for it, and Vote is more than happy to deal the damage. Argus drops on Scream's head, and he's got to use the Lord of the Afterlife to get away. The Fire Giant is leashed, and their target is now Stewart, as Nika is bullying him in the backline. Inbound caught in the midst of everybody and falls down. Cuvo Fred grabs Stewart as well, and right back to the Fire Giant the Warriors go.
Looks like Vote's finally starting to deal some damage to inbound. That Silver Branch pickup paying for itself in damage. Inbound dead for 50 seconds. Stewart, the exact same, and this is the first Fire Giant this game that is acquired by the team that starts it.
A little bit late on the ultimate from Baronic, so he won't find anything against the Fire Giant. He will get a little bit of damage against Neil in the process, but now Baronic is just walking forward at 2 players. Scream gets plucked by Neil, has to use his beads instantly, but a nice double stun from SOT will make sure to keep them at bay in the jungle. Meanwhile, the rest of the team for the Scarabs, they've got to retreat back towards this tier 2, which they can't even defend because now there's 4 players from the Warriors pushing through.
Yeah, and that tier 2 is gone already. Vote chunks these towers with enhanced Fire Giants. Still 10 seconds left on inbound. I think maybe the Oni Warriors could have at least peeked their head into the Phoenix, get a damage check and see whether or not they could have taken it out, but instead take the safer path. Pyromancer seems to be the objective of choice here. And after a team fight 1, after picking up enhanced Fire Giant, you still have 3 minutes to play with it. I think the Oni Warriors make the right decision. They go ahead and reset and start to look at their siege again. And this is the first time we're going to get a look at the Oni Warriors' true siege in a 5-on-5 engagement, and they've got great space control. Nika and Cuvo Fred going to act as that spearhead to drill their way into the defense of the Solar Scarabs, just to create the space for Dardes and for Vote to try and take out these objectives. And Neilma doesn't have to be a part of that front line. Instead, can sit in the back, make sure that Vote feels okay, make sure that Dardes is safe, utilize that Scarab's Blessing from a range, not just for his backliners, can also do it to make sure Nika and Cuvo Fred can do whatever they want. Nika himself at least does have that secondary HP bar from the Somersault Cloud, and Cuvo Fred has the actual second HP bar of Sentinel of Zeus. This front line of the Oni Warriors is so annoying to deal with. I mean, essentially, everyone's got a second life, and some of them might have even more if Scarab's Blessing lands on them.
The big difference between the last Fire Giant they had and this one is the fact that Vote's still alive and has it. Cuvo doesn't have an ultimate anymore. He has to use it to try and run away from Stewart and Solar or Troll. Tier 2 tower takes a lot of damage from Vote, but because of how unhealthy Cuvo is in the process of an inbound, looking for a cutoff path, potentially blinks past damage from Dardes, looking for Cuvo, gets the leap instantly in the beads, but Scream finds the Lord of the Afterlife and is just W-king a Cuvo Fred, but Argus will make short work of that and instantly push him away. Neil, who had to use the Scarab's Blessing himself, is now in danger. The snipes from Stewart are good. Third one will connect and take him down. Neil falls once more.
SOT finds himself in a bit of a precarious situation, and Nika isolates Stewart, but oh my god, dies fast.
Lost almost half his health in an instant, uses the Somersault Cloud to get back to safety, but again, they're now down 1 frontliner, and with only a minute or so left on Fire Giant, they've gotten nothing off it. They didn't get the tier 2 tower. There was no Fury for them to take either, and it's still on a nice 1-minute respawn timer. Effectively, all they've gotten was some relics.
Some relics, a tier 2 tower, some gold, but at the end of the day, Solar Scarabs find themselves still 5,000 gold in the lead. It's all elixirs all the way down for the Scarabs. That's what they're starting to look at to separate themselves in terms of power from the Oni Warriors. And I spent all that time discussing the value of the Oni Warriors' objective siege on these permanent objectives. They didn't get to do it. They didn't even get to try. The Solar Scarabs had Bobby kind of come in from the edge of that engagement. We saw Dardes try to use the polymorph to stop Bobby from engaging on them. Misses the polymorph. Bobby blinks past, finds the flop into the back line onto Cuvo Fred, and from there the rest of the Scarabs were able to work their way forward, isolate Neilma, and find that pick. That's another Fire Giant for the Oni Warriors that essentially gets no value.
And you can even test that to the fact that Cuvo Fred was, for some reason, all by himself at the top left of the map. Tier 2 tower will fall down, so they get something with that enhanced Fire Giant buff besides just that mid-tier 2 they grabbed earlier on, so a little bit of extra for it. But Neil, he was waiting on the far left side of the map just in case there was a potential base race or base siege from the Scarabs. Luckily for him, there was no one charging down that side. Instead, all the Scarabs will back away and start repositioning themselves for this next Fire Giant.
So we're about 1 minute out from the Fire Giant coming up, and the Oni Warriors have got deep wards on the Solar Scarab side of the map, mainly around that blue buff. A lot of redundant wards there. Some of those sentries not getting a ton of value, and instead the Fire Giant pit itself and defensive wards are non-existent. So the Solar Scarabs, with a lot of time to work with and defensive positioning already on the Giant itself, can drop some wards, get their sentries down, head back to base, refill their pockets, and then come back yet again, whereas the Oni Warriors going for this Primal Fury, they deal some percentage more damage to the Fire Giant, take less from it, but sacrifice a lot of time that they could have been warding. I mean, look at the map already. Scarabs, it's all red on the right-hand side.
And Scarabs, they've got the positional advantage for this Fire Giant, but Inbound went back to base, as well as Vote, who had went for a back alongside him. Gets a Potion of Power to give himself a little bit of an extra boost, but as you mentioned, the Solar Scarabs, they've got ward control on the right side of the map. Red wards littering around the Fire Giant pits. A couple of blue wards thrown in there from the Warriors as well. Cuvo Fred gets spotted by Scream and forced to leap away quickly, but all 5 players from both teams, we got all 10 here to the right side because this next Fire Giant could be the end. We're pushing the near 70-second respawn times at this stage of the game. They may not even need all 5 players dead. If they can just get 1 or 2, maybe get a third one, the Fire Giant may not even be necessary because they can start breaking towards the base.
Fire Giant started up 50% inbound, dropped down to 50%. Nice abduct from Neil Ma.
Portal faded before he could even walk back, so now Inbound down to half health. Fire Giant was started there, but immediately dropped in response. Will be picked back up. Vote and Neil, again, the only 2 throwing any damage towards it, and that's really all they need. Vote's got quite a bit of crit built, so he's able to get some nice damage against the Fire Giant. The ring drops, but it's only Neil inside the pit. Scream will slow him down and force him to walk through the ring. In the back goes Nika looking for Stewart. They'll get some good damage. Stewart has to run because he's way too low in health, but they lost the Argus in the process of it. Dardes drops that ult in the middle.
Losing Stewart inside this fight is a lot of your steal potential lost. No more snipes to threaten. Inbound is working his way forward, finds Argus for his trouble.
SOT goes through the portal just to get away from Nika and Cuvo, but nobody walked forward for the Fire Giant. That goes the way of the Oni Warriors, and now they're looking for the push forward. They have all 5 nice and healthy to try and siege this base, and it's now the Scarabs for one of the first times this game on full defense.
Yeah, I mean, we could have said it. Last time we saw the Fire Giant go the way of the Oni Warriors with Cuvo Fred. Gets picked out very early on, dropped down to 10%. This time is grouped up with his entire team, so it is going to be a tried and true 5-on-5 engagement. So our Scarabs are going to have to utilize all their defensive utilities. I'm talking about SMITE.
No, Neil. Neil has to use the Scarab's blessing on himself. He gets caught by Scream, Stewart, and Baronic, falls through the portal, and that's the end of the support. 1 more down for the Warriors, 70 seconds on the respawn, and that's the call for the rest of the Scarabs to go through. Cuvo has to use his ultimate very quickly and very early in the fight. Vote loses on the ultimate instantly, now he has to throw it against Inbound. Stewart looking for some snipes. Vote will be able to find Baronic, does manage to thread the needle and find that last basic.
Meanwhile, Dardes admit is dealing with Scream, and he doesn't win that fight. Scream takes him down.
SOT with a 2-man ult. Nika able to get to the cloud himself, looking to take down Scream. Will manage to get it with the damage afterward, but it's a 3 versus 2. Make it only a 3 versus 1. It's just Cuvo Fred left for the Warriors, but it's only the front line left for the Scarabs.
If Cuvo doesn't take out Stewart there, the Scarabs might have been in a position where they could have looked to end this match. Instead, it's just tanks alive for both teams. The Oni Warriors cannot siege. They are struggling to find opportunities to even look at these Phoenixes. They aren't posing the questions to the Scarabs. The Scarabs are keeping them out of the Phoenix range itself. The Oni Warriors need to take a slower approach. It almost feels like impatience. They just walk it down towards these towers in poor positions, get caught out inside the jungle, so our Scarabs actually isolate multiple members of the Warriors. When you've got enhanced Fire Giant on 5 members 44 minutes into the game, you gotta play it a little bit slower, a little bit more clinical around these sieges. Instead, what is that, the 3rd time now the Scarabs said, yeah, nice try. You can go ahead and try again later.
I feel like we cursed them because we just mentioned, last time Cuvo was a little far out of position. Now they can finally group up as 5. We mentioned they're all grouped as 5, ready to go up mid lane. And then Neil and Cuvo decide to start veering towards the left lane, and out of nowhere, I don't know what possessed their brain of, guys, let's start fanning ourselves through the jungle. And because of it, Neil gets caught. He gets shredded by Baronic and Stewart. There was absolutely no chance of him getting out of there because the portal placement by Baronic was on point that entire way through. Now, only Cuvo Fred has the enhanced Fire Giant, and that's only for another minute, and not the most optimal target for you to have it left. They haven't had it. It's not that they can't see, it's just they haven't had an opportunity to for themselves because they keep putting themselves out of position across the map.
Gotta wonder what's going through the Oni Warriors' head now. This is 2 sets in a row where they've had to deal with a late-game Yanis that is changing these fights with out-of-this-world ultimates. Baronic dropping Neilmod down to about 10% HP with his ultimate. Yesterday, it was Dardes getting sniped out by Hurrywin consistently. The Oni Warriors got to be having some war flashbacks here, and maybe it's a fight over the Oni Fury that's finally going to open up the door for one of these teams.
It's the only neutral objective up for any team to fight, so you might as well go for it now, especially when you've got positional advantage. Solar Scarabs will start it up and instantly take it down to half. Neil will find inbound and gets his beads, but Solar Scarabs get the Oni Fury, and that's all they really cared about. They didn't even really want the fight. They were just seeing if the Oni Warriors would bite, and it's really only Neil who tried to take the bait.
So here's the thing about gold at the 45, 46 minute mark.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We're not worried about that. Maybe you're worried about these Oni minion waves generating threat on the map, but with Fire Giant down, with Pyromancer down, it's not separating the map. Instead, the Oni Warriors can leisurely walk over, clear out each one of these waves. Oni Fury generally is something that you go for to create opportunities to look for sieges. If you can generate threat in mid while these Oni minion waves are leaking down left and right, the Oni Warriors would have to make a hard decision. Okay, do we want to defend against the siege itself? Or are we worried about these Oni minion waves taking out our Phoenixes? So the Solar Scarabs are in a position now where maybe they do generate some threat on the map. It's a large grouping. They're going for a siege. This is confident play.
Pushing right towards the mid of the map instead. They start veering towards the right jungle, looking to see if they can catch anybody. Cuvo Fred has to bounce away. Nika in the back line looking for a pincer, but he gets spotted instantly by Scream, and that'll stop any further aggression from the Scarabs as all of them make a nice and swift retreat back towards the Fire Giant. Inbound actually has to go back to base. Took about half of his health trying to deal some damage back to the Warriors in that fight.
When's the last time you've seen Fire Giant not have 80 wards on it, huh? This is a new look. 33 wards placed by Inbound so far in this game. That is a metric ton separating these team fights. And now it's the Solar Scarabs yet again finding themselves at the Fire Giant pit first inside of this engagement and dropping the defensive wards as well. Offensive wards deep on the Oni Warriors side of the jungle. So they can create opportunities to try and isolate whoever they want. Nika trying to rope his way all the way around. Spotted out immediately.
Inbound as well, trying to make a rotation around. They'll find Nika, get the ultimate out of him instantly as he gets caught inside his own Scorpion pit. Now Nika crashing down from the cloud, takes half his health from Baronic on landing. Inbound does manage to find him with the stun, but not much further follow on him. Instead, they're looking for Neil, knocked up with the belly flop. Argus drops in the middle, and Stewart goes to the sky looking for snipes or just looking for safety. He'll be in danger as soon as he lands. Nika crashes through with the board and will be able to take one down with the help of Cuvo Fred. SOT with a big old afterward. We'll find Nika Baronic able to trade it. Scream got rooted off to the side. He's a lot damage away from him, so he's gonna have to go back to base, but Inbound is the one in the most danger right now. Use the Intoxicate, gets a nice Pridwin shield and a portal just for good measure.
Good heads up play from Baronic to make sure his support doesn't fall here. Scream going for a little bit of a split push, but Neilma showing himself on the map is enough to dissuade that one from continuing. Nika trades out his life for Stewart, and Nika mixed a power play there, separates the Solar Scarabs multiple times inside of that engagement. He is a thorn in their side, forces them away from the defensive positioning of the Fire Giant as the Scarabs chased him into the lane, ults away with a Somersault Cloud, takes the scenic route all the way back around and finds Stewart on his own, and he finds him lacking 30 seconds of the Grayscale there. And training out a Soul Laner for an ADC at this phase of the game, yeah, that's value because that's all the Scarabs' ability to go for the Enhanced Fire Giant. They do not have consistent enough damage without Stewart to look at this objective.
There are so many wards peppered around the bottom side of the jungle. Neil
Bobby
grabs SOT. SOT has taken so much damage, and Dardas puts him down with the Polymorph Scream, looking for the chase, but the blessing is enough to get Vote out of danger. Now Scream on the run at half. Cuvo looking for the damage. The damage from Rend is good. Gets a nice disarm at the tail end of it, but Scream doesn't care. He's running, and meanwhile, inbound gets plucked in by Neil. That's an 80-second respawn.
And here's the thing, the Oni Warriors keep their ADC alive, so Vote can DPS the Enhanced Fire Giant this time around, and it's going to fall down very quickly. Stewart, though, does make the respawn with the snipes. Could look for a steal.
He's at the back camp looking for his opportunity. He goes for the snipes, but it's a little too bit early. He realizes he's way early on the trigger for it. Instead, the Enhanced Fire Giant will go the way of the Oni Warriors, and the Scarabs, they're down both frontliners. 30 seconds till SOT, 45 seconds till inbound.
J-Mac, we've been here before, man. Maybe not as dire straits as this for the Solar Scarabs, as inbound is still dead for nearly a minute, but the Oni Warriors have been in multiple positions where they can start to look for the siege. Maybe I Caster's Curse them one more time. They're grouped up as 5, they're ready to go in, and there's only 3 members here from the Scarabs to defend.
Neil walks forward to tank the Phoenix's damage, and
where'd he go?
Quick damage back at it. 367, a basic coming from Vote. Yeah, there's no chance that Phoenix lives for more than just a few autos from them, and they'll make their quick movement towards the right side of the map. That Phoenix is now in danger as Vote continues to pepper damage against it. More 300+ autos from him, and there we go. There's the siege that we finally needed from the Warriors. They take 2 Phoenixes, but a lot of that thanks to help that there was no frontline for the Scarabs to even try and defend it.
So while Bobby was dead, they took an Enhanced Fire Giant, the Oni Warriors that is, and 2 Phoenixes, and he just now finally finds himself respawning. Solar Scarabs have, again, found themselves in this position multiple times this game. They haven't been utilizing the Phoenixes as those unofficial 6-man, so I'm not sure how confident I am in the Oni Warriors to finish out the game from this point. The Solar Scarabs have been taking crazy team fights in neutral territory that they really necessarily shouldn't be winning, considering Fire Giant for the Oni Warriors, but they have been consistently so far. And look at this grouping. Does it seem like the Scarabs are concerned? This is confident positioning on the map, and the Oni Warriors on the opposite side. Maybe we look at a base race?
They're not deterred one bit. Look, the Scarabs are hoping that somebody walks through the jungle, but they see 2 pop on the map in the mid. They see 2 or 3 now popping on the left side of the map. The Solar Scarabs may just be going for a base race. They've got the damage to be able to take this one down. 100+ damage and auto going through. 5 take down the Phoenix. Is this going to be the opportunity for it? But now everybody from the Warriors have back. Cuvo Fred dives into the backline. Argus drops down. That's 1 kill for Dardas, 1 kill for Neil, and 1 for Vote. 3 down instantly, and Veronic low. Use the ultimate just as an escape option for it. SOT does not have the same luxury of those portals. Cuvo Fred will continue the chase, and the Solar Scarabs, they go on a Hail Mary attempt at that base race, but it's not going to come up favorable for them.
Look, they got it down to about 30%, man. Admirable effort there from the Solar Scarabs, and I think the writing's on the wall, man. Oni Warriors, I think they got it. What's Barana going to do with no ultimate? Maybe go for the end? What? No shot. Yeah, Nika's got you.
Nika is playing gatekeeper against that Titan. Henry recognizes Baronic walked up and said, hey, what's going on, dude? Did you want something? Maybe this Titan? Nah, not happening. Instead, the Oni Warriors in a big fight on the defense. They're able to turn it around and take game 1 by rushing it right up the mid lane. And taking down the Titan took them almost 53 minutes to do it.
I feel like I say it every time the Scarabs play. They don't win often, but they never make it easy for their opposition. No. I don't care if they're playing against the Olympus Bolts or the Valhalla Valkyries. Every single one of their games, every single one of their sets is going to be a nail-biter. I love watching this team play.
It's one of those things where, sure, they may not be able to make their playoff run now, but they can at least make it tough for other teams. They can at least make it a little bit harder.
Over, but we're going to ruin yours.
Exactly. Maybe not the game winners, but the game ruiners at the end of it. But Solar Scarabs, I mean, they put us to a brutal 53-minute game in order to at least delay the Warriors from being able to take this one instantly. But game 1 does go to the Warriors. We're going to go to a break and then come back with the desk.
kids are crazy for. Cthulhu. Start your morning madness with a bowl of morning happiness.
Cthulhu sale is ongoing now. You will take part. Save up to 33% off gem bundles. You will take part.
Crazy crispity, crazy crunchity, crazy crunch.
Select chests up to 50% off. You will take part. Boosters, avatars, wards, and more up to 50% off. You will take part. Party up with up to 3 times favor. Worshippers and XP. You will take part. This is your duty.
Crazy Cthulhu-y. Cthulhu. Surgeon General's warning, Cthulhu's are not of this world and should not be ingested by children or adults over the age of 80. Gems are not included as a prize because Cthulhu's are not real. Reality is meaningless, time's a construct. They not all hope when you ingest Cthulhu's. Use as directed, part of balanced breakfast. For the crispity, crunchity, crazy crunch, get cuckoo with Cthulhu.
You will take part.
Of a balanced breakfast.
Can we take a commercial break?
There are 3 important takeaways from that commercial. First and foremost, the Cthulhu's gem sale is going on right now. Started yesterday, so if you haven't gotten into the gem sale, you're already a day behind. But also that reality is meaningless and time's a construct. Those are the 3 things that you should take away from that. But yes, in-game right now, the Cthulhu's gem sale going on, and it will be going on for another little while until September 6th, and it's not only gems. You saw in the commercial there's chests, boosters, avatars, all that sort of fun stuff, all discounted, that you can use those brand new gems on. And also, reality is meaningless, time is a construct. Time was not a construct, or maybe if it was a lengthy construct here in game number 1. We are almost at an hour, but not fully at an hour, and it's the Oni Warriors Gormizer who are able to stand strong despite a valiant effort from the Solar Scarabs and take the win.
I mean, to the point where the Scarabs were maybe 10 seconds off of winning that. I mean, if there was a slightly delayed back or maybe just a worse fight from the Warriors, the Scarabs are the ones that come out on top here because they just kind of decided to go for the end. They rush the Titan. They get it low enough, but not so much. The thing that surprised me was that even after that Titan rush, Scarabs, like Boronic specifically, still had through space and time. And I was sitting here thinking, I was like, it's not enough damage to kill it.
No.
But you could have thrown it out there.
That might be interesting.
Would have helped.
Right?
I don't know.
Right. Ultimately, I don't think it would have.
No, it would not have killed that Titan.
Yeah. Look, we're defending Phoenixes here. 22 minutes into the game, we would go about another 40 before this one came to a close. And so these highlights, I think, are indicative of more of how the team fighting went rather than how any sort of lead got built, because the lead ended up sort of being meaningless there by the end of it. But these 2 teams, Gore, we figured and we rated would be pretty closely matched up based on how their recent performances went. And that was definitely the case. I do think Dardez and Vote, both of the carries for the Oni Warriors, deserve some love here in this one. Because the Hera is always a fun pick to watch on Dardez, and we're going to get a look at the base attempt here. But think about Vote, the Caledonian Boar, and 5 grouped up members of the Solar Scarabs. I think you're licking your chops thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to walk forward as an Artemis there and have your entire kit ready and available to you, that is maybe one of your best case scenarios. I have to give them credit too. Mifflin said it best. The Scarabs have not been making it easy for any team to beat them the last few times. And this was maybe the most largest example of that one. Definitely the longest example of that one. I mean, they're stealing Fire Giants at one point. They also lost a Fire Giant at one point to a steal from the Warriors. They're giving them trouble even when the Warriors get that Fire Giant and pushing them to the distance. I think the Scarabs played very well that game. It was just tightening up the very end. The same thing, the Warriors played very well, but there were definitely moments for both teams where some of these neutral objectives got out of their own hands. Some of the team fights started to get out of their hands, and you could see where the targets were. Honestly, there was one fight, I think it was the Fire Giant just prior. The only difference maker is Neil Ma's ult. It is because they dump everything onto Vote, and Vote gets rezzed and is able to just survive the rest of that fight, that game ends up being a Warriors fight. Otherwise, the Scarabs are running out on top.
And Vote was able to survive and do 45,000 damage.
Yeah, it kind of did a whole lot.
Dardez was, I think, at 49,000, nearly at 50,000 damage in this game. No one from the Solar Scarabs was in 15,000 or so of that mark. Let's see what picks and bans for Game 2 has in store for us. Why don't we, Gore? Because now it is, it's pivot time here for the Solar Scarabs, unless you don't mind what you got there in Game 1. And I don't know if the Solar Scarabs do mind what they got there in Game 1. It's a well-crafted composition, and some things just don't come up your way. But I do think you're giving over a lot in the carry conversation to the Oni Warriors if they get Artemis and Hera again. Kind of feels weird banning a Hera, but it's Dardez, so you might have to.
That's the awkward conversation. They banned Serket, Odin, Yamoja. You don't really want Yamoja to go through. You don't really want the Hera to go through. Don't really want the Serket to go through. Might be able to first pick Yamoja, but I don't really want that for the Scarabs based on the win rate and track record it's had.
Here's the thought. Once a set, and this is a really, really bad thought. I'm going to precursor this already. Once a set.
What a awful... Oh, wait, sorry, you're not done yet.
Twice a set. Okay, Gore, good thinking. We don't want it once a set. We want it twice a set. A team can forfeit their first pick. So, like, if the Solar Scarabs were in this first pick slot, it would immediately
go to choose because they just lost.
It would immediately go to the Oni Warriors for picks 1 and 2. But the Solar Scarabs get to take all 5 bans right away. They say, all right, we'll let the Oni Warriors pick first, picks 1 and 2, but we get to ban all 5 of our gods right off the bat.
That'd be interesting. But
look, it's a horrible idea. I'm just thinking that was totally.
I imagine like I'm gonna use the supports as an example. You ban Yamoja, Ymir, Khepri. Who else has been big so far?
We're talking about in this set?
Just in general. Like you ban those 3. You ban the Odin, and let's say you ban Artemis, right? So there's five really good ones, and then they lock in Tiamat. And it's just like, so it's one of those things where,
I'm not the coach. I'm not the one telling them how to pick and ban with this new mechanic.
Maybe I gave a bad example. I should have given 3 more gods because that would have been all 8 of the first bans.
We are officially 90 degrees from reality here, or 180 degrees from reality. I more meant like, well,
there's back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity.
Right. In my mind, I'm just thinking there's so much you want to ban against the Warriors after that game. The only way to do it would be as if you had all 5 bans right away, and now we've come full circle. They don't have all 5 bans right away. Instead, the Solar Scarabs take away Serket, Yamoja, Khepri, Artemis, Tiamat, Fenrir on the other side, and that's going to leave the Odin open to be picked up here. Some flexibility in that pick, I would say, between solo and support, maybe mainly.
Especially with inbound.
With inbound, but I think leaning towards solo in my mind.
Yeah, I feel like that's actually the pivot I was going to make. You had said the Scarabs might want to run back everything they just picked. And I'm like, man, that Osiris was really good. The Giannis was really good. The Ram and the Bacchus fit pretty well, although there were definitely some moments where Stewart was unable to just live, which maybe was out of their control in general. But I think if you change that Cerberus to something that maybe can get a little bit more done, that maybe it's a little more driving factor, specifically from Sot, who has had a really, really good year. And so I like this pickup because I think it is a good pivot for them. I'm also excited to see this because Gilgamesh was one of the last bans last time around. It was very, very weird to see him go through so much of the picked and bans portion and not get looked at. So I really like that the Scarabs are pivoting into it.
It's because neither team were able to take all 5 of their bans right off the bat, Gore. Just saying.
Just saying.
Of course I'm completely kidding.
At Cooper.
At Cooper, yeah. Make some changes here, man. Odin, Gilgamesh, and Terra. That is a strong front 3 from the Solar Scarabs. They've got their front line, their jungle. They've got that all sorted out. So we're still waiting on Hunter and mid for the Solar Scarabs, which is actually not bad because you have the ability to counterpick a little bit what the Oni Warriors are going to draft for themselves. And it's kind of the opposite story for the Oni Warriors, where they've already got Ram, they've already got Morrigan, so they've already got Hunter in mid, and then Nike, seen it in the jungle, very unique play style, Nike out of the jungle. But the teams literally go kind of in opposite spots as far as what they still need here in picks and bans, and so the counterplay in these last few is going to be interesting to watch.
And I think for the Scarabs, it's going to be interesting, not just the Ymir, but like with Khepri already gone, you've removed the Yamoja as well, so you're really starting to limit the support pool specifically up against Neil. The downside is that Neil has been playing for a while, and actually last year was very similar to what we've seen out of Bobby the last few weeks, playing a lot of these eclectic picks as well. So I'm not too worried about what he's going to be able to pick here. I think it is, and also honestly, when you go and look at your solo lane as well, depending on this Nike, more than likely jungle. We've seen it jungle most as of late.
Could also be solo.
But could pivot, and you could just go, okay, cool, we're just going to grab an assassin for Kiva. Let's have fun.
Yeah, so Neil is not going to play Yamoja. Neil is not going to play Khepri. Neil is not going to play Ymir or Ares or Terra. Instead, he's going to play Ardio. So Neil is on his 6th pick here. We don't really know where Ardio is on his personal tier list, but as far as supports being taken away, you could maybe even throw Fenrir in that. So 6, asterisk 7 pick here for Neilma on the Ardio. What do we think about the Ardio, Gore? Because we've seen it a couple of times. Not a frequent pick here at the SPL level. but definitely not one that's looked horrible in the games that we've seen it.
It was absolutely bullying yesterday. The Warriors, when they played it, were just going constantly onto Heroin and mid for their first game, and that's actually what I want to see. Like, normally I'd say Artio, she's got good CC, she's got good some sustain in that kit, she's decent, right? But not necessarily a top tier support, not really a bottom tier support. But I think the way Neil played her yesterday up against the Dragons was a very, very good showcase of how she can showcase like a top support. And that's what I would be most worried about if I am Baronic here, is just getting constantly jumped on and just broken down by this Artio.
Well, if Baronic is going to be getting jumped on, at least he has a cleanse, right? Because Baronic has picked up the Hell. Hell has been at the forefront of a lot of conversations in the last couple weeks here in the SPL, largely around the solo lane and the concern that maybe a healing meta was on its way back in. I don't know if it ever really left, and I think we've had a conversation around that. Hell, though, for Baronic in the mid lane, this is a new one, admittedly. It's been a lot of Giannis for Baronic, more standard mages. Hell, I don't think is standard for Baronic yet, but still makes things interesting here, Gore. Between Hell and Terra, anti-heal might be very important here for the Oni Warriors.
Now I'm curious, because I don't know that, not just rare form, I don't know that he's ever played Hell so far this year. I don't think that's been a pick for the Scarabs
unheard
at
of.
all.
It's unheard
and so
of.
It is something that is at least a fresh look. But then, I mean, look at this. You've got Terra, you've got Hell. That's an absurd amount of healing that you're going to bring. You have a little bit of anti-heal in Cerberus and what he's going to be able to strip away, but I think that's going to need to be tacked onto. You're going to have Nike, who I'm thinking of as not necessarily the greatest anti-heal applicator out there. Cerberus, Artio are probably going to have to get a lot of those passives. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Cursed Ankh. Like, a lot of things just to try and control that. And that's not even dealing with the Phantom you'll probably need for the Odin, the Gilgamesh that's going to be around, and the Chernobog that's going to be jumping into every single fight with a global ult.
These are, kind of some quick final thoughts here, Gore, before we jump into game number 2, see if the Oni Warriors can close it out. Does Cerberus, particularly the ultimate, take a bit of a knock here because there's a Hell on the other team? The ability to group up, cleanse, and get out of things there. It's a very specific scenario. Do you think it...
Does it break it? It is, like, not the same way. So that pull, I guess the Ares pull that the Bolts had up against the Kings when they cleansed, like, 5-man, isn't as easy to accomplish against a Cerberus. So I think it's definitely going to come into play, and that cleanse is going to be annoying, but maybe not at the same extent.
It's a factor. It's not game over necessarily. Hope it's not game over for the Solar Scarabs. Can they push us on to a game 3 against the Oni Warriors? We'll have to jump in to find out.
Well, let's find out indeed, because this could be another long one with the way that these teams have drafted through. Lots of late game I'm seeing between Hell, between Morgan, between the ROM as well. J-Mac Tucker and Mifflin joining me once again, along with Doug on the Spectator. Looking across the board for it, though, standard starts pretty much coming out of everybody inbound going for a Lotus Crown Rush. We've been seeing that a lot out of Terras as of recent, foregoing the early Thieves just for that extra heal, bang for your buck on the heal, I should say.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it down there. It gives you additional defense. You're going to get some power as well, and we've seen with that recent new discovery with Terra, you can kind of one-shot buffs if you dash through your second ability, so maybe having a little bit more power is going to be a big boon for inbound going forward. I think you're right to say that this game has the potential to go late. It feels like both the Oni Warriors and the Solar Scarabs have decided that they just kind of drafted around the late game. They're like, all right, we're going to play a 40-minute match, might as well keep that one rolling. So Hell, ticking time bomb. SOT on this Odin, also going to be very impactful inside of this one. Just in the late game, he's got some decent targets to lock down. Dardes and Vote, even Neilmon, notably, not able to escape that cage unless they decide to pick up something like a Phantom, or if Dardes transforms into somebody with a leap. So I think very interesting to see, or very interested rather, to see how this pace kind of develops as the match goes on. I do think it's worth noting that Baronic playing Hell and Dardes playing Morgan means that they're both very susceptible to early game ganks, so maybe follow Scream and Cubo Fred to see how the pace of this one's going to develop.
Not a ton of mobility between these two mages. Yes, you do have stealth from Dardes, but that's likely not going to come till level 3, level 4 for that mage. And, well, stealth is nice, but if you get hit by the damage instantly, at least for the Morgan, you do get popped away from it, so you would lose out on that movement speed. SOT, who was getting bullied pretty hard in the solo lane, is now flipped the table and is now pushing Nika back towards his tier 1 tower.
Yeah, now it's all about It's all about waiting for now, J-Mac. I'm not expecting too many fireworks to fly early on in this one. I mean, the last game, what was it, 54 minutes? And the first 20 or so minutes, I think we had 2 kills in 20 minutes, game 1. And I'm expecting a very similar pace this time around. That said, we can still hope that either Scream or Cubo Fred is going to be the hero that we deserve in the SMITE game chat. That's going to get the ball rolling. Already, though, duo lane pressure is going the way of the Oni Warriors. That is aggressive positioning. Neilma sitting on the very edge of that tower, trying to put out as much damage as possible. But when you're this far up, opens up the door for junglers to rotate over, and Scream's rearing his head.
Yeah, Scream has already made his way towards this side of the map, has the blink available. Who will the target for him be? Looks like it is going to be both. Blink immediately and kicked against the wall. Scream picks up first blood, and they may be able to get more if they can lock down Neil. Drop kick one more time. That's against the wall. Jump over just to close the gap, but Scream doesn't have the CC to lock him down. It'll just be a first blood.
Just a first blood and maybe a purple buff invade as well. Vote has respawn, but it's a slow walk over, and Neil, I don't know, man, seems dangerous.
That's going to be an immediate blink from Neil to reposition himself to the other side, closer towards Vote, but Vote doesn't look like he has much interest in even attempting to try and stop this purple. Instead, that will go the way of Scream, and inbound with the walls will make sure to stun Neilma and keep him at bay and allow for Scream to make his retreat.
Yeah, clean play from Scream on that rotation. Oni Warriors trying to get the ball rolling early on. They were establishing pressure to look for a purple buff invade of their own, but instead it's Scream making a uncharacteristic early rotation, and it feels like an adaptation that the Solar Scarabs have been working on now, because generally it's Scream kind of hanging out with SOT inside of the solo lane, but this is 2 games in a row where Scream makes his place known in the duo.
Veronic's even made a rotation to the left side, trying to go for a purple buff invade. Neil takes a ton of damage, but purple does still go the way of the Solar Scarabs thanks to the help of that rotation from the mid laner.
But with that rotation and having not cleared the wave, he's going to lose out on a good deal of farm in mid. Will Baronic, Dardes already ticking over to level 6. Baronic still not there, having cleared out the wave. So not getting that kill on a Neilma is going to hurt this hell in the long run.
Scream looking towards the right side, but with no ultimate, very low kill pressure against Nika. Despite Nika having a little bit lower of the mana pool for himself. Does have blue buff to regen just a little bit for himself, but don't think we'll see Scream make that kind of an impactful attempt, at least not without his other solo laner there to help him out. Instead, he'll just get a little bit of extra minion farm to proc himself over towards level 5.
No, now it's about what's he going to do with this level 5? Where is he going to go? Where's the Winds of Shamash going to find its value? And I'm thinking it's either got to be Dardes or it's got to be Neilma. Even Vote going to struggle a little bit if his dash is down to deal with it, but that's slow. Generally going to be nearly impossible for Dardes to deal with if he doesn't have the Changeling available. Scream in a position now where he can essentially do no wrong. I think even in rotating into the soul lane, if we drop the cage from SOT onto Nika, you can force him to jump out, the slow from the spear chasing you down, then you drop Winds of Shamash on top of that. It's essentially a secondary cage for you inside of the lane. I'm very excited to follow Scream. It's up to Cubo Fred now to match the pressure that we've already seen from this Gilgamesh.
Inbound already dropping sentry wards to make sure they have the ward advantage around the mid lane to keep Baronic as safe as possible. As we've talked about, not the most mobile and not the safest of the mages. Does have a form of cleanse from the healing stance, but that's really the only inherent safety that this hell does have. The slow, not all that great, that comes from the decay. Outside of that, it's just going to be positional awareness for Baronic that will really keep him at bay, and maybe if he can land a couple heals as well.
Yeah, it does have the speed boost from the heal stance as well. Cubo Fred maybe wishing he had a heal coming his way.
Winds drop down, immediately leaping over the wall is both SOT and Scream. They really want to take down Cubo Fred, and they will do so. Kill credit goes the way of Baronic as he got that final hit.
Yeah, maybe Baronic heard me say it, says, all right, I'll heal him. Hits him with a light stance 1 and finds the kill. Inbound on the other side, tries to find himself a purple buff invade, but maybe bites off more than he could chew. Forced to use the beads, and Neil still on the chase.
Slowed down, stunned as well, but Vote doesn't have the follow-up.
Oh, there it is.
In immediately, walls come through. Vote, if he wants this kill, he's gonna have to go for the ult, but he's not going to elect to do so. Inbound used his own ultimate in response to try and deter them from walking too far forward.
If Vote hits all 3 shots, Inbound's just dead. All right, never mind, he healed up. He's fine now. You missed your chance, Vote. I understand. Going for all 3 shots is kind of difficult to do. It's a high-risk play. You lose out on some of your survivability in lane. Didn't even back yet, so didn't have the additional power from Icavale. So maybe now, if he had that Icavale, would have only taken 2 shots instead. Vote does not want to lose out on that ability. Plays it a little bit more cautiously inside of the lane.
Inbound all through the while of it. Did lose out on his purification beads, but was still able to make it out in time, and thanks to the help of Vote not having the power spike yet available to him to really help out and potentially get that kill. So looking across the board here for just 7 minutes in, we've already got almost as many kills as we had 20 minutes into the last game, but this time the Oni Warriors are repeating what we saw in game number 1, which was red buff invade, purple buff invade. Well, they'll start with the red at least for now. Neil will not pick that one up. He has the green buff. He gets caught inside the winds, rooted in place, drop kicked against the wall, and inbound gets the credit for the kill, but Dardez has made his rotation with an ultimate of his own, dropping a cage down for his team to allow Cubo Fred to pick up a kill.
And inbound left high and dry is able to work his way back in a lane. Nice transformation from Dardez. Not only was it the cage, but it looked like a 3-man bird bomb to me. That was a ton of damage from the mid laner from the Oni Warriors. And, well, SOT can maybe wishing he wasn't playing the Odin, because so far, Dardez finding more value on that pick than he has. Now, and what are the Oni Warriors going to do with that turnaround? They are able to strip the red. They are able to find a kill. But what else is there to do on the map? Not much. Greater Scorpion being looked at by Cubo Fred. Maybe opening the door for a Gold Fury a little bit later on.
Greater Scorpion started up, and that will go the way of the Warriors, unless the Scarabs have some miracle shot that comes out of nowhere to steal it away from them. So, luckily for the Warriors, they will have that advantage for themselves. And now evening out the gold that the Scarabs had built for themselves. They had about a 1,000 gold lead, but that is now teetered back over towards the Warriors to make it even for gold, and for the most part, even in experience.
So, last time around, it was the Oni Warriors with a couple more kills, with the Solar Scarabs with a lead, if memory serves. This time, it's Solar Scarabs with the kill lead and the gold lead inside of the early game. But with the pace of this match and with the pace that both of these compositions are looking for, I think you got to evaluate which one of them is going to have a large advantage in the mid to late game. And I think I'm flavoring the Solar Scarabs draft here. It's hard to argue against Odin and Hell together in the late game. We've seen what Nika's been able to do on this Odin pick in the past. I'm sure SOT looking to replicate some of that there. Scream essentially giving his team a secondary cage. The burst heal from Inbound's Earthen Fury aggro has described that ability as, all right, is it post 20 minutes? Did you press 4? You probably won the team fight, and I tend to agree. Terra's ultimate, so valuable, especially up against gods like Nika's Cerberus. I mean, the Ghastly Breath being a dot ability, essentially, a ticking over time, means that you're just going to proc that heal every time you use it.
Well, it looks like we hit the rewind here, because it's another red buff and another ultimate from Screams. Neil will be able to make it out of the wins this time around. Stewart dives in with his own ultimate, roots Neil in place. He's stuck and takes a little longer to drop him down this time, but ultimately Baronic does get in. Yeah, I think he said it first. Just a case of deja vu.
But this time, Gold Fury's available, and the Solar Scarabs want to keep it going for themselves.
SOT.
Yeah, they're picking this one up, and SOT found Cubo, but it's just zone here.
Yeah, it's just to keep them locked down while the rest of the team does the Gold Fury. Vote managed to get one hit and put Scream at critical health, and that lets the Gold Fury take him down, but not before they at least drop it. Now Baronic on the run, because Nika's rotated so much damage from the Guardian. Nika picks up a double kill with the Ghastly Breath, and it's just SOT left on this side, trying to fend against them. Inbound is here, but there's not much you can offer aside from a 3-man wall. Major stun out of Inbound. Saves the life of his solo laner for the time being, but Dardez, with that Dark Omen, is able to help with Cubo Fred to take him down.
Oni Warriors turning all the way around there. Solar Scarabs defend their red buff, find a kill, get the Gold Fury, and then
Inbound
lose out on 4 lives. Bobby now sticking around a little bit too long, and, well, Dardez is SOT.
Inbound gets caught, immediately caged in place as well, because, well, Dardez has the ability to make his own cage, and Inbound still living for just a little while longer, but Dardez will take him down. Meanwhile, Vote takes the tower just a little too long and ends up falling to it.
Hey, shouts to Vote for being a team player. Doesn't want to reset the tower to his homie Dardez. Okay, I mean, dying to the tower is not a big deal. Nobody really even gets the assist credit for that, I don't think. Inbound dies before Vote does, so maybe not in range to get credit for that one. Dardez, not trying to make the same mistake, is leaving as quickly as he can, but Scream on the chase.
Scream looking for more, will not find Dardez. He just snapped his ankle with that stealth and hides behind the tier 1 tower. Scream comes up empty-handed.
That's tough for Scream. Once he locks down the entire lane with Winds of Shamash, he just knows that Dardez has been sitting inside the tower. Doesn't actually have vision on him, but realizing that he didn't back up, can't just stick around inside the tower. Doesn't want to go the way of Vote. Instead, just walks out, twiddles his thumbs, and says, all right, well, I'll try again later, but later might not come. We're looking at a 3-level lead for Cubo Fred in the jungle. That is desperate times for Scream.
Scream, despite his early gank at the start of the game, really hasn't gotten a whole lot more beyond there. He's got some assists thanks to help with the red buff from previously, but besides there, a lot of the fights have been coming to him. He hasn't been able to farm because of it, just because the Warriors are stripping the farm on the left side of the map, and that's where they continue the fights afterward as this left side. So there's nothing for him to get after those fights have finished.
No, there hasn't been, and he's suffering for it, and goes for the Magi's Blessing in that second slot. Is going to give him a little bit more survivability, can stick around in these engagements a little bit longer. Darda is going to have to work harder to find that one-shot potential, but defense from behind is less valuable than defense from ahead. You're really struggling in the damage department because you just aren't leveling your abilities at the same rate that Cuvo Fred is. You don't have as many damage items, so you have less power as well. That survivability, sure, is nice, but because we are already looking at a full Jotuns and Brawler's Beat Stick from Cuvo Fred, I don't think Scream's going to get much in terms of protection from this Magi's Blessing. It's just for the passive at this point.
I mean, the bubble is important, but there's
good.
so many ways that this team could break. I mean, Cuvo can hit it with the barrier, or he could just jump right on top of him. Nika
Disarm.
can as well walk in and just do anything he wants. Yeah, Disarm also breaks the bubble. Yeah, Cuvo has 3 ways to break that bubble just by himself. Magi's Blessing, yeah. This cloak is really nice, but when one player has 3 different ways of taking it from you in almost an instant, never feels good.
Yeah, I think Neil's got 3 ways. Dardez has got as many ways as there are ways in the game because of the Changeling Ultimate, but at least the first ability in the base stance as well. It's going to be very hard for Scream to maintain that passive, and Oni Warriors, well, they're looking to keep that pressure up. Pyromancer is pulled out here, but Scream and inbound turning the corner is enough to make them think twice about it.
Cuvo wanted to take that bubble away from him with the Ren, but the third hit gets stunned by inbound. Dardez on the hunt does manage to find one, but Dardez will immediately have to transform into the Odin. Doesn't have that cage just yet dropped down. He's looking for the perfect opportunity. Will leap in the back and find Baronic all by himself, but Neil is in danger. He is down to a quarter health. Baronic taking a ton of damage, has to use the Aegis, heals back up just a little bit. Meanwhile, SOT picks up Neil on the rotation. Scream is the one in danger as Nika finds him in the back line, and Cuvo Fred comes all the way back into the midst of everybody just to fall back down.
That's a 2-for-1 trade favoring the Solar Scarabs, and having Screen be the one that you lose already at a pretty large deficit is going to keep him further behind, but trading out Cuvo Fred means he won't fall too much further behind. That's a nice rotation from SOT to turn that engagement around. Maybe the first mistake the Oni Warriors have made is fighting where SOT can get involved.
Inbound will throw the heal out and tank up the tower, so that way Stewart can very healthily take this tier 1 tower with a little bit of assistance. So that's 500 gold swinging the way of the Solar Scarabs. And despite the massive fight that the Warriors had at the left side of the map earlier on, they didn't get anything else from it. They got all 5 kills, but look at the gold lead. It's still dead even here. Solar Scarabs have a couple hundred gold back and forth between them, but Oni Warriors, at least for themselves, they do still manage to hold the experience lead.
And I think the entire experience lead is essentially solo and jungle. Nika 2 levels up, Cuvo Fred 2 levels up as well. So I expect to see the Oni Warriors try and utilize that. If they force a fight around this Primal Fury, have Nika rotate out, and he already has, could force an engagement where they can utilize that experience gap where it lies. And the Solar Scarabs, well, they've got vision on the Gold Fury, so they'll know when the Oni Warriors start it. But it's whether or not they can actually defend. With Scream on the right-hand side, I'm not loving their odds.
Scream looks like he may just be occupied with the tier 1 tower instead. SOT gets found, but not much more beyond there. He's going to throw a little bit of damage with the spear, gets stunned by Dardez, so that cooldown is now away from him, and Nika will just continue the zone, half health on SOT. There's no way for him to safely get into the middle of all this. Primal Fury looks like it will go the way of the Oni Warriors, and they may be looking for even more as SOT gets caught, has to use the beads to get away from Nika's ultimate and drops his cage just as an extra defense.
But it is Stewart up in the air. Where is he going to go? Looks like he's chasing out that right-hand side. No, that's a transformation from Dardez up into the air.
I thought he was going for it.
Yo, I'm getting crossed up right now, man. What's going on? Look, Solar Scarabs trying to get some semblance control of the map. Do look at the Pyromancer, but again, with Dardez on the right-hand side, spotted out by Scream, there's not much to do there. And Scream being says, look, guys, I'm here. I'll auto-attack it, but if a fight happens, there's not much I can do.
Boat trying to make something happen on the left side. He'll dash it aggressively against Stewart and force him to use his own dash to get back towards safety. But Scream not being there at all for that Gold Fury fight means that the Warriors had all the advantage in the 5v4. Luckily for him, he got tier 1 tower, but that's traded out instantly as tier 1 tower and right lane falls for the Solar Scarab. So cool, you got the 500 gold, but you lost out on the objective. Now that one will respawn. It'll have another Oni Fury for them, popping up for the Warriors if they decide to be the next ones to go for it.
Look, we're looking at a very similar game to Game 1 in that at 16 minutes in, we're about dead even as far as gold is concerned, but this time with a lot more killing, so maybe the scenic route taken here this time around. Oni Warriors, though, do still maintain a very sizable experience lead inside of the soul lane and the jungle. Mids equalize, support favoring inbound right now, and ADC's got 1 level in favor of Vote. So XP's, I would say, about the same. It's not the biggest margin separating these teams. It's not enough that the Oni Warriors are like, yo, I'm way stronger. We can do whatever we want on the map, but it is enough so that maybe in a 5-on-5 engagement they are feeling confident. That seems to be the strategy from them yet again. Looking at this Pyromancer, large grouping from the Oni Warriors, and look at the map, J-Mac. No one from the Solar Scarabs, A, in range, or B, on this side of the map.
No, nobody's going to be able to get there in time. SOT will attempt, but by the time he gets there, that Pyromancer will have already been dropped down. Neil Ma will be there to help in making sure to secure that, but yeah, no, we're relatively the same stage of the game as you mentioned, with a lot more kills and a lot less deja vu. It felt like at this stage of the game, in game number 1, we were still fighting over red and purple buffs on the Solar Scarab side of the map. I think it was upwards till nearly 20 minutes that they were doing this, so at least the Warriors have gone away from that for the moment, but you see wards thrown over the wall. Maybe not. Maybe I spoke a little too soon. Nope, red buff will go the way of the Scarabs.
And no contention there from the Oni Warriors, who are just trying to find a pick. Scream reveals himself a little bit high up on the map, and keep your eye on Neil. He's got the rope.
Neil tries to walk through, but gets stunned by inbound. And it will be a split of the Oracle Harpy. Scream did manage to take one of those before being pushed away by the Warriors. So 1-1 means no vision control over the Fury. It just means a split of the experience for the two teams. We do see everybody starting to now sway towards the right side of the map for the Scarabs. Stewart still sitting towards the left, but because of that Living Nightmare ultimate, he can rotate over. Just might be a little risky for him.
What we haven't seen so far from the Scarabs is SOT making that proactive rotation away from his side of the map. Once he starts coming over to the left-hand side, initiating the fights for his team with the cage, I think that's going to spell a very distinct tonal shift for the Solar Scarabs, because so far it's been Scream initiating for the most part, or inbound, trying to do it themselves. And Windsor Shamasha is great space control, has great lockdown, but it's not a wall. You can walk through it. You can speed boost your way out of there. SOT, if he's able to go in and force some leaps, get some slows, separate the engagement, that's probably the best bet for the Solar Scarabs. But level 16 on the Odin, maybe wants a couple more items before he leaves lane. Just now ticking over to level 17 to match up with Nika. I think that SOT really has to step up for his team here. This Odin pick needs to find some value.
You can see in the build, Nico wanted to go towards the cloak tree, but looked across the board and hit the tab button and saw that there was crit on Stewart. So he decided to try and ignore some of that and pick up that spectral armor for himself. And as far as the relics go, only one team has picked up the Cursed Ankh, and really you only need the one team for it, as you do have Neil, the one to grab that and upgrade it instantly as soon as he picked it up as well. I mean, he has just now hit level 12 recently, so he immediately makes full value of that relic to be able to get that extra damage should the Scarabs heal in the midst of the fight. And with Veronic there, it's very likely it will happen.
Worth noting that the Solar Scarabs don't elect to pick up any anti-heal. RDO healing, it's not the main part of her kit, but it's good. Like, you get like 300 burst heal for your teammates when they're around. When you're in the Druid stance playing aggressively, Nika is going to be stealing a lot of healing from the Solar Scarabs as well. I think they might have been well served by like a Divine Ruin, maybe a Brawler's Beat Stick, something along those lines, even a Toxic Blade, just to help out a little bit, but instead, 0 so far. And that Ankh, yeah, that's value. I mean, it's already upgraded. When you get healed, you're taking bonus damage inside of the Scarabs.
Well, according to the healing chart, not quite the 300 burst heal for the team just yet, only sitting at 58 for all Neil, as he's gotten one nice, I think he's gotten like one healing cone off, and that was very, very early on in the game when they were pushing up to tier 1 tower. But aside from that, the Warriors have the position for the Oni Fury, already down to around half health. SOT will stun Neil and use his leap to get away, as Nika will chase him out, as well as Neil walking forward. Scream missing the drop kick, and Cuvo will just try and play zone with this Nike, but so far, the Warriors not stepping too far out of line. Dardes acting as
front line, finds SOT.
SOT gets stunned, and immediately Dardes has to go for a transformation. Nice drops the cage, and the drop kick puts him right against the wall again. Neil and SOT both in danger as SOT is dropped down to half health, but everybody else is trying to bully out Veronic, who's caught in the middle of both of the frontliners. Cuba Fred shoves him back into the middle of the fight. SOT has to use his shield just for some extra life, but Inbound doesn't have the same luxury. He will fall, and SOT shortly after, unless he can find an escape path. Cubo Fred will try and lock him down, and Nico will make sure to put him in the dirt.
Meanwhile, what's Stewart up to on the opposite side? Strips away a tier 2 tower and maybe looking to take the Phoenix as well, but Neoma here on the defense, I don't think he gets this one. Stewart, you gotta be in these team fights, bud. We've seen what happens when you're not, and the Solar Scarabs cannot be happy with it. Baronic inbound and SOT dead. This is going to be a quick Phoenix.
He might get punished because of this. He makes that huge rotation to right to try and take Phoenix. Meanwhile, the Oni Warriors now with a minion wave could take a responding Phoenix, and probably a more important one. Sure, right Phoenix is great to take, but when you could take the one on the opposite side of the Fire Giant for the map, huge pickup here for the Oni Warriors. Not only do they get a few kills, they pick up a massive Phoenix.
And they're going to get the Oni Gold Fury as well, so they're going to be able to split up the map. They've already got Fire Minion Waves ticking down, as you highlighted, the hardest to defend lane when you're looking at Fire Giant defenses, and now every other lane is going to have some enhanced Minion Waves going down them as well. This is a tough spot for the Solar Scarabs to find themselves very early on in this game. It's only about 4,000, maybe closer to 3,000 gold in favor of the Oni Warriors, but map state, you gotta take into account the map state, and it is handily in favor of the Chaos team. Solar Scarabs, well, at least they've got someone who's shown a propensity to want to split push so far, and now on the defense, Stewart can use that ultimate to rejoin the fight if they want to defend the Fire Giant for the Solar Scarabs. I'm not sure that I love their odds inside of a neutral objective fight, but we've seen what the Siege looks like, we've seen what the team fight looks like. I think the Scarabs are going to have to choose to stem the bleeding somewhere, and better sooner than later.
Stewart is going to push out the Oni Fire Wave at the very least to make sure and strip one of the hardest waves to kill in the game. Even for carries at this stage, it takes them a little bit more effort to take down those minions. So he will be able to drop that and continue pushing up the left side to try and make this Fire Giant just a little bit easier for the Scarabs to defend, but the Oni Warriors are the ones who are pressing forward. They're getting vision control. You see a sentry ward right on the Fire Giant. You see one at the mid camp as well for any possible sneaky dives that could come from Scream or from SOT.
Stewart keeping up that role as split pusher, is able to strip away the tier 1 tower on the left-hand side, and maybe a tier 2 as well, but inbound, where'd you go, bud?
No, inbound does not exist anymore as Dardes hits a nice combo to take him down with the help of his carry. Both looking for big snipes. Will find all 3 hits against Scream. Dardes transforms into the Terra to use the Earthen Fury for some extra defensive, but Stewart, he's just chilling. He's got a backpack picked up for this left side. He'll take both towers and keep pushing, but the rest of his team is just dying on the right side of the map.
Man, I don't know what's going on in Stewart's head right now. He's got to be thinking just singing happy songs while the rest of his team is literally fighting for their lives, trying to keep this Fire Giant alive. Stewart's just like, yeah, dude, I got a tier 1.
He's singing Kumbaya over here.
Got a tier 2, it's whatever.
Yeah, Scream will get a push against Nika, but Fire Giant's already down to half health. Nika picks up Baronic, who has to use the beads immediately. Dardes on the hunt looking for him, but Baronic will be able to make it out, but not before the Fire Giant falls. Scream finds the gap across the wall to be able to leap away, and Stewart, well, he finally left that side of the map. Yes, he pushed the minion wave all the way to the Phoenix, but at what cost?
Man, Neoma went over and ruined Stewart's fun. What a party foul from the RDO on the Oni Warriors, man. Let him do his thing. That guy, he wasn't hurting anybody, legitimately not hurting anybody. Doesn't have very much damage. Second lowest damage in the game, only 11 more than inbound there. Stewart needs to get involved in these team fights. I'm being a little bit glib here, but legitimately, one team's got a hunter and the other one doesn't right now. Stewart's not fighting.
He's got double crit, and one of those is a Deathbringer. He hits one
He's
crit.
not even going for the structure buster build?
Like all he's got to do is just hit a couple of people, and he can almost double that player damage in the midst of a fight. But instead, as you mentioned, he's not even going for a tower killer. He's going for a player killer build, and he's not fighting the players. He's in the PvE mentality, and as you said earlier, Neil went bottom to be a party pooper. This is the kind of game where we're winning so hard across the right side of the map. You look up and you just see somebody that's like, dude, are you really split pushing at a time like this?
Well, at least he's exposed a couple win conditions now. If the Solar Scarabs are able to take a team fight cleanly, 2 Phoenix exposed thanks to the efforts of Stewart, but they've got to put up a defense. They got to win a team fight, and I think for them to do so, Stewart's going to have to be here, and he is with his team this time around. But that left side Phoenix, they've already been pushed out, have the Solar Scarabs. This one's going down very fast. Oh, where'd it go?
Oh, as soon as it spawned, it is already gone, and SOT, as soon as he leaps in, he loses almost his entire health bar down to just a sliver as he uses the cage. Sky is both looking for snipes, gets the second, the shield. We'll make sure the third will not be enough to take him down. Instead, the rest of the team for the Warriors pushing against the mid lane Phoenix. Scream drops the ultimate against 2 of them, and force them back just a little bit. Dardes has to walk away, but Vote manages to pick up inbound in the fray. But Neil gets low. The Phoenix not going to be enough damage to take him down. And Cuvo Fred harassing the backline. Moronic is too low, and Moronic will not be able to make it out as Dardes picks him up. Scream forced back to the fountain, and with huge fire waves pushing from the left side, the Oni Warriors, much quicker this time, will be able to take the game away from the Scarabs and take the set, but not before they at least pick up a couple more kills.
Hey, right in that last team fight, Stewart got 50% more player damage, added 2,000 onto the 4,000 he already had. That finds himself at like third least inside of this game. Unfortunate one for the Solar Scarabs, especially considering how back and forth game one really was. It feels like maybe the wind got knocked out of him from that one. And truth be told, losing a 54-minute game has got to be a little bit of a morale crusher.
Yeah, it's not a fun time when your Hunter is really not participating in the fight. However, I think a lot of that game does just come down to the fact that Stewart never fought until really the end stages. He only fought when the fight came
those
to
towers,
him.
though.
He chunked
They
those
didn't
towers.
stand a chance.
Did a good job. Took down 2 of them in the process with it. So big for him, but unfortunately, there wasn't much more beyond there. We'll take it to the desk after this break to break down the set.
What's up, Smite fans? Dolson here, and if you haven't already, you want to make sure you're checking out twitch.tv/SmiteGame on Mondays from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, because we are doing the team content days where we bring in one of your favorite SPL teams, and we sit down and do all sorts of crazy content with them. We've got Emotion.
Let's go!
We've got Mifflin throwing himself at the green screen. We've got plenty of actual informative content around all of your favorite Smite players and teams themselves.
Okay. In my defense. Hold on, let me think of a defense first.
So make sure you tune in on Mondays from 1 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time to twitch.tv/SmiteGame. And hey, don't worry, if you can't catch it there, you can't catch it live, make sure to go to youtube.com/SmitePro to catch the VODs after the fact. It's a whole lot of fun. You don't want to miss it because, hey, you never know what's going to happen.
Yep. That's, chat, you just got to know who's daddy. That's just how it be, man.
after their close matchup against the Dragons yesterday and then a win against the Solar Scarabs here today, Oni Warriors jerseys are at an all-time premium nowadays, and you can get your hands on one at shop.smiteproleague.com. And I'll do you one better. If you can't decide which team to support, you can just support the SPL in general with hoodies, jerseys, hats, beanies, all that sort of fun stuff. All that and more at shop.smiteproleague.com, of course furnished by our sponsor, our clothing sponsor, Insight Apparel Company. So as always, shout-outs to Insight. And make sure to go to shop.smiteproleague.com for all your SPL apparel needs. Goremizer still with Dolson to discuss what happened here in game number 2. And Gore, this one is, I think, literally half the length of game number 1, a little bit more concise. It wasn't going to be difficult to be shorter than game 1 because that one was very, very long. But this one, a little bit more straight to the point here for the Oni Warriors.
The Scarabs came off with a really, really good start, very standard for what we've seen out of them lately, where they kick things off with a couple of kills, they start to get the ball rolling, and then the Warriors came up, not only stopped the ball, they picked it up, threw it out. They're not even playing the game anymore with them. Yeah, they just really started to turn things around. I mean, you can see here, Scarabs are leading 4-1 in the kills, but the gold was not nearly enough in favor of the Scarabs to really start pivoting things over there. Vote, as well as Nika, as well as Dardez, really got the ball rolling for them. I will give Dardez, I think, a lot of credit, because you should see here, I think this is actually this fight, there was a Odin cage and then a second Odin cage. Maybe it was a different one, same area, where they just did so much. Nika was able to get a lot of damage done. And I think it's just this ridiculous combination that this team had that just fit together a lot better than what the Scarabs were able to put forward.
Yeah, Dardez in the changeling throughout this game just added such a unique difference to a lot of these team fights depending on what his target was. You mentioned Odin's, things like that. And I think earlier on in this replay package, as we watched Cubo Fred run down the Solar Scarabs here, we saw a moment where Vote was Odin caged in and then just used the ult, hung out for a while, and then dropped back down. That was some counterplay I think we saw a couple of times there in that game where Vote was able to stay safe enough and keep himself in the fight.
It was that last fight. It just like, I was trying to think of it because I was like, man, I remember something I wanted to say about Stewart, but I couldn't remember what it was until I saw it, and I remembered he's split pushing that entire time on Chernobog, and normally that's normal, right? That's fine. Didn't have his ult, wasn't there for a lot of those fights. I mean, you can see he did less damage than the Baronic, but just barely more than Inbound was able to get. Granted, they didn't have a lot of time to get a lot of damage out there, but it felt like, again, for the Scarabs, similar to their end call of game 1, that some of the priorities were maybe a little rushed for them, and that they might have been able to open up a lot more, especially if Stewart had been there for that fight.
Yeah, man, look, you're on opposite sides of the damage spectrum here if you're Stewart and Vote, and I understand forces that be were kind of working against Stewart here in this game, but when Vote is able to do 15,000 damage and Stewart is at 6k, and again, I'm not saying that is because of Stewart as a player. I'm talking about this is the type of game where an ADC was only able to do 6,000 damage compared to the 15,000 on the other side. Oni Warriors are never going to lose a game like that, right? And so now
they're feeling fine.
Now in a couple back-to-back sets, and I'm going to ask Neil Ma about this in just a moment, I wonder, and I don't know, I'm going to get a straight answer on this, if the Oni Warriors are feeling good after showing up well against the Dragons, or if, a loss is a loss and we're sad about it anyway. But I think from our perspective, now a couple straight sets between Drags yesterday and Scarabs today, where the Oni Warriors have looked competitive.
I'm going to see if I can predict it, because in my mind, it's a regular season game. We're not happy with the loss, but we're happy with the progress. And then this win is like the we needed this to make sure that things were very solidly in our favor. In fact, I bet they probably wish game 1 had been a lot faster for them. Either way, I think that they've shown a lot going forward, and that this is actually a really good look for the last couple weeks leading into playoffs.
Here's the good news, Gore. If Neilma didn't have an answer, maybe he does now. Neilma sitting down with me for the post-game interview. Neo, thanks for joining me. First and foremost, I'm going to pick up right where Gore and I left off. You have a 3-game set against the Dragons yesterday. Very close, very competitive. I am curious on your perspective. It's a loss as far as standings go. But does the team still take away some good from the set yesterday and still feel good about how competitive you looked against the Dragons?
Honestly, the only thing that we really need to improve on is just Nika needs to be better. That's it.
Yeah, it's all on him, right?
He just needs to be better. He's not carrying me hard enough. That's all I can say. And until I'm literally barely playing the game, drooling on my keyboard, and I'm getting wins because of him, it's not good enough.
You're right, and you had some pivotal ults here in this set, despite Nika dragging you down. See, all of us this
Thank
whole
you.
time, you know, we thought that Nika just had a massive backpack on, and you guys were in, and instead it's literally the opposite, I guess.
Somebody gets it.
Look, you and I, look, the Iron Gang's on the same wavelength here. You don't have to worry about that. Let's look at game one of this set, though. This one goes nearly an hour long. From a player perspective, what's it like playing in a game that long? You get down to the nitty-gritty. At that point, you're probably just ready for the game to be over.
Yeah, I mean, I think my team just needs a bit of a stronger mental, so sometimes I need to put them through the ringers. A couple times, I think a few people trolled. I'll take a little bit of credit, but I'm just doing that because I need to teach Nika he needs to play better. I'm giving him a longer game to give him more opportunity to get better, and I think that's a great thing. And his mental, at the end of it, is going to come out stronger. His gameplay is going to be stronger, and as a team, we're going to be stronger if Nika would just pick it up a little bit.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, Neilma, what's standing between you and back-to-back-to-back World Championships is your solo laner, Nika.
I would never say that about any of my teammates. I think that SMITE is a team game. If you want to say that and start that narrative, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's
but I
on
would
me.
never say that about my teammates. Yeah, I would never say that about my teammates. Everyone's fantastic.
Neil, I love you and I miss you. Thanks for sitting down with me for the post-game interview. Congrats on the win. Oh, the whiplash. So it's all Nika's fault, but it's also not Nika's fault. Look, spirits are high. Neilma, a goofy dude, and love talking to him. I think we got an answer from that non-answer.
Did we?
I think we did. And here's what I'm gonna whip out the pickaxe. I'm gonna chip away some of the answer there. More, it's the spirit of things, right?
Yeah.
They're clearly in a mental state where they're able to joke and go back and forth and have fun with one another. So we're not in dire straits if we're the Oni Warriors right now, because you're not joking around like that if, you know, the mental is truly shattered in the way Neilma says. And so I'm very excited, Gore. There's only a few games left for this Oni Warriors team, a couple, as a matter of fact, and not easy ones, Titans, Kings, before the Phase 2 playoffs. And they're maybe starting to play some of their best Smite right now. They find themselves tied with the Titans as far as wins go. The Titans do have a matchup tomorrow against the Valkyries. So the Titans will change either to 5-7 as well as the Oni Warriors, or 6-6. And the Oni Warriors will play the Titans next weekend. So it's really that 5th, 6th spot, Gore, where things get interesting. Still a chance to catch the Leviathans as well if the Leviathans drop a couple sets.
And you have to remember, seeding matters at this point, right? Like, I mean, being top 2, again, gets you a nice little bye, but also who you then play if you're 5th, 6th, or 3rd and 4th is going to be determined here. So you either want to make that climb to have a quote-unquote easier matchup for yourselves, although I think at this point we've kind of seen for top 7 teams, it's not necessarily going to be an easy route for anybody. And so knowing that the 6 of them are going in, you just have to hope you have a much better, I guess, matchup versus a specific team, which is very difficult to determine going into a playoffs.
I gotta admit, I'm sorry, I'm giggling over here. I'm still laughing at Neil. Who would create that narrative about Nika? It couldn't be me. It's all you guys.
It's all Nika's fault. Yeah, you know, if Nika could just strengthen things up.
God.
But also, there's nothing standing between me. Me and my team are gonna get the 3-peat for me. It's okay.
We got the strongest mental in the league. God, I love talking to Neil Ma. That is the win for the Oni Warriors, and the last we will hear from the Oni Warriors here this weekend, but not the last you'll hear from us here today. We've got the Leviathans versus the Kings, a top 4 matchup coming up next, so stick around.